Counter.com has gone viral. It's been seen and shared by members of Congress and others in the policy world. For the New England News Collaborative, I'm Amy Sokolow.
The website currently estimates an additional American death every 18 minutes tied to Medicaid cuts. Vice President J.D. Vance set his sights on a prominent civil rights and religious leader from Springfield, Mass. For posting audio supposedly of Vance criticizing Elon Musk on X. In the audio, a voice said to be that of the vice president says Musk, quote, he says of Musk, he's not even an American, he's from South Africa, and he's cosplaying as his great American leader. The Springfield Republican reports that Vance is quoted as saying that Bishop Talbot Swan II doesn't have the intelligence to recognize that the audio is fake. Swan says he has no plans to take down his post. This is GBH News.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include CFP, Certified Financial Planner Professionals, committed to acting in their clients' best interests. Learn more at letsmakeaplan.org. And the listeners who support this NPR station.
Eastern Brownie, I am Marjorie Egan. You're listening to Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH. We are broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library and streaming at youtube.com. Thank you, /GBH News. Tomorrow we're going to be joined by the guy who used to run USAID, Andrew Natsios. We're looking forward to talking with him. Friday, we're going to be back at the Boston Public Library with another edition of our live music segment. Good morning, Jim.
Hey there, and we should also say the DOGE subcommittee, chaired by Marjorie Taylor Greene, is now holding a hearing with the head of PBS and the head of NPR, attempting to defund both. And it's happening as we're on the air. At 12:55,
That's right.
We will bring you some of the highlights as our colleagues monitor the hearing down in D.C.
We do know that our local Congressman Stephen Lynch gave a very enthusiastic shout out to Arthur the Aardvark earlier.
Yeah, she did.
In the
He's
session.
the ranking Democrat. It's
Yeah.
Marjorie Taylor Greene is the chair of this subcommittee, and Steve Lynch from South Boston is the ranking Democrat. So yesterday at a Senate Intelligence Committee hearing, also going on while we were on the air, leaders of this nation's national security team repeatedly downplayed their use of a commercial, non-secure messaging system to discuss active plans of attack against the Houthis in Yemen. Here's CIA Director John Ratcliffe, he was on that thing, and Director of National Intelligence Tulsi Gabbard, who also was.
My communications, to be clear, in a signal message group were entirely permissible and lawful and did not include classified information.
Senator, I'll reiterate that there was no classified material that was shared.
So despite their claims, they did not hand over the transcripts to the committee. But Jeffrey Goldberg, since the experts say they weren't classified, he's the editor of The Atlantic, he posted them himself on the Atlantic site. Today they're available for everybody to see. And I've got to say, at least J.D. Vance is sending prayers for victory. I felt a lot better knowing that. I don't know if you did, Marjorie. John Ratcliffe, the CIA guy, texted the bombs are, quote, a good start. National Security Advisor Michael Waltz responds with an emoji, 3 emojis, a fist, an American flag, and fire. It's estimated 53 people were killed in the strike. So the lines are open. Let me just get this out here. 877-301-8970. So many things to talk about. It's all on the table relating to this this messaging. Do these prove that these people owe Hillary Clinton an apology? Does the whole thing concern you, or have you moved on? And here's my personal side issue. How do you feel about grown men in charge of security of this country communicating with emojis?
I don't know,
I have
Jim.
to say, it's like they're 11 years old. The other guy, who's the one who did the prayer thing and the bicep?
Steve Witkoff. He had, like this. Yeah, like, aren't we tough? And
do you find that
Michael
to be
Waltz
juvenile?
did the like right in your
fist,
face kind of thing.
Do you find that juvenile?
Well, you know.
Yes is the answer.
Yeah, it's not just juvenile. I mean, they're dead. They're killing people.
It's like a bunch of bros.
It just seems as though terrible people. Yeah, but they're still people and they're dead. And by the way, when they're talking about you have the transcript now from The Atlantic where Pete Hegseth is saying, team update, time now, 11:44. Weather is favorable. Just confirmed with CENTCOM. We are a go for mission launch. 12:15, launch first strike package, F-18s. I mean, it's all right out here in the transcript. Of course it was classified information.
Well, not only classified, clearly war plans, which Trump and others said they weren't. Targeting, timing, sites, the whole deal.
Kind of weapons, kind of airplanes. So,
But they sort of got hoisted on their own petard. Because the line was they weren't classified, as we just played, that gave the opening for Goldberg, who was not going to publish the whole transcripts to print them all, which they now are. 877-301-8970. There are really two things on the table. One is the broader topic about how you feel on day two as we learn more about this grotesquely irresponsible behavior, which could have put our people, I mean, as was said by many people, including many members of Congress, of course, Democrats, if these plans had gotten out in advance and they knew what time the planes took off before they did, obviously there could have been dead American service people and beyond. And that's one. And two, I think people think I'm kidding. The emoji thing really puts me over the edge. I am not comfortable any adults using emojis, I must say. But particularly if you're talking about war behavior.
You don't do little hearts, you mean, on your text
I do not.
You don't do the thumbs up.
I have never once tweeted a thumb emoji in my whole life and never will.
And little birthday cakes on people's birthdays?
No, I do not. You know, occasionally it switches to the thing and you're not paying attention. Other than that, I never have.
You know, the president calling Goldberg a sleazebag, I don't know if that was really a good move on his part. And they have a whole piece in the New York Times about Pete Hegseth's rocky first months at the Pentagon. As we mentioned yesterday, our friend Borowitz said that what Pete Hegseth needs on his cell phone is a breathalyzer to tell if he's been drinking. And by the way, speaking of drinking, we have a little clip from Seth Moulton.
This is a great line. Again, 4 tours of duty in Iraq. Go ahead.
Here's the clip. This is Seth Moulton reprimanding Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth for sending the signal message sharing classified war plans. Here it is, I think.
Accountability is back. I quote Secretary Pete Hegseth. That was our Secretary of Defense on the record just a couple of months ago. Now the debate among national security professionals is over whether the Secretary was just incompetent or whether he was drunk.
What a line.
That's how low this has gone. And those are serious debates happening among national security professionals today. Because my colleagues are right. This put American lives at risk.
Was he just incompetent or was he drunk?
You know, in the Times piece, they were talking about how aircraft targets, timing had all been exposed, and that Mr. Hegseth risked the lives of American warfighters. And there was a quote in here from retired Major General Paul D. Eaton, who served in the Iraq War. He said, "My father was killed in action flying night trail interdiction over the Ho Chi Minh Trail after a North Vietnamese strike. And now you have Pete Hegseth releasing information that could have directly led to the death of another American fighter pilot." So there's somebody who lost his father in an airplane doing a bombing mission.
Our numbers 877-301-8970. What's your reaction on this? I worry, like I do about almost all things that Trump does that cross the line, that almost anybody who doesn't like him is critical, and those who love him don't care what he does, don't care what he says, don't care when he lies, don't care when he puts American service people at risk. They don't care about anything. I hope I'm wrong, and maybe one of you will call and say I am.
You know what's so weird? I mean, I know we know President Trump lies all the time. Now you have Tulsi Gabbard and John Ratcliffe getting up. They're under oath, lying yesterday about whether there are war plans. And Tulsi Gabbard didn't even want to admit she was on the phone call.
That's totally correct.
At the time. And Tom Cotton, the Arkansas senator, had to kind of rein them in.
Republican, by the way.
He's a big Republican, a big conservative, had to rein them in, maybe probably preventing something from happening. Then Pete Hegseth says, no war planes were discussed. We didn't do any of these things. He says terrible things about the journalist who was on the call, no fault of the journalist. He just lies over and over again. So it's kind of like they just lie, and
that's shocking, isn't it?
Nobody seems to care that's on the Trump side. I mean, I know we're all concerned about inflation. I know we're all concerned about the cost of living, but
they all lied.
You can't operate
They all
way.
lied.
Well,
Joe Biden lied.
There's degrees.
Bill Clinton lied.
There's degrees of lying. You know, when Barack Obama, that's one I always pull out. So when Barack Obama said you're going to be able to keep your doctor in Obamacare, well, that was not true. I don't know that was a lie in the same way as it was just, it didn't work out the way he thought it was going to work out. This is a different level, I would say.
Different level. Let's take some calls. 877-301-8970. Again, we're talking about this correspondence on in a non-secure chat, and whether that bothers you at all. And if you want to make me feel good, you can comment on emojis used by adults. By the way, an anonymous texter says, Jim texts himself a birthday cake emoji on his birthday. I do not. I bought myself a birthday cake on my birthday. I did not tweet myself or text myself an emoji. Jonathan and Malden, you are first on Boston Public Radio. Welcome to the show. Hi.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Sure.
Listen to you guys all the time, and
Thanks.
I really enjoyed listening to you.
Thanks.
And I just wanted to mention, I'm outraged. I think, everyone should be outraged, whether you're a Democrat, Republican, or especially the military. They should be outraged by this. And the emojis don't outrage me.
Well, you're an honest guy. You're 50% right anyway. Are you surprised that people on the Republican side of the aisle, who are generally the ones that say they care most about national security, with the exception, Cotton did a pretty good job at that hearing. Are you surprised that they have been crickets for the most part?
Not at all. I'm not surprised. I'm not surprised by their lying. They do it constantly, like you mentioned. It's just par for the course for those people.
Jonathan, I agree with everything except your position on emojis. Thank you for calling. We appreciate it. 877-301-8970.
Here's the White House Press Secretary Carolyn Leavitt. She's from up in New Hampshire. She attacked Goldberg, the journalist.
Of course, why not?
Trump called him a sleazebag. She said he put his sensationalist spin on this, and we should point out, as you did, that he withheld the classified information.
Goldberg did.
Yes, because he was concerned about releasing it. And she said no war plans were discussed and no classified material was sent to the thread. And it's incredible,
but
really.
She then goes on to say, please don't release it. So she's saying it's not classified, but don't release it because it's obviously embarrassing to our people.
But it's kind of like you're standing here and you're saying, Marjorie, your shirt is orange when I'm standing here in a purple shirt. It's kind of like that blatant. You know what I mean? All the information is out there. You can see it. So what do they hope? That no one cares?
You know what Trump said about that?
What?
I didn't see the shirt. I don't know any shirts. I don't know about orange shirts. I didn't see them. I don't know who any of these people are, and I never heard Greenland.
Elizabeth sees the emojis as a symbol of their incompetence and immaturity, which is outrageous and terrifying.
By the way, that is exactly as I see it, immaturity. If you're an adult and a semi-normal adult and you choose to use an emoji, I feel bad for you, but I understand it. They're talking about bombing these Houthis in a foreign nation in Yemen, and they're doing emojis to sort of bro themselves up. You're not bothered by this either, are you?
No, I think that the celebratory, like I said, okay, these are bad people. I understand that they needed to take some of these people out, but I don't think you have to be celebratory about it in that kind of way with flames and muscles and all that kind of stuff.
I'm not troubled by celebrating their success, but they do it like little boys and a girl. The girl being Tulsi Gabbard, even though she doesn't admit she was there.
Here's Marion Dartmouth. The incompetence of juvenile behavior, the disrespectful regard for human life, especially our servicemen and women, is staggering and terrifying. That's how I feel. Lance in Lynn says, with any luck, we'll all get advance notice before Boston is bombed, and then he puts some emojis at the end of that.
Yeah.
We're not in favor, I guess, in the White House these days.
877-301-8970. John in Westford, welcome to the show, John. How are you?
Hi. I'm really not that bothered by it.
Why's that?
And I mean, yeah, it was a breach in security, but you could have like a Secretary of State with an unsecured server.
Right.
What a shock that you brought that up, John. Go ahead.
There's no shock. There's no slap down, nothing. And that goes on and on and on. And, yes, you shouldn't have done it. None of them should have.
John, you know that almost everyone involved in this call at the time said Hillary Clinton should go to jail. And if it was anybody besides Hillary Clinton, they said they would be in jail. They do it. And there's no accountability for any of it.
And it was a nonstop theme.
That's because one is actually a criminal offense, when you
This is
buy a subpoena at when your emails are subpoenaed and you deliberately destroy them.
John, we talk to you a lot. You know more better than that. You know that this is at least arguably a violation of the Espionage Act, not to mention the fact that the witnesses yesterday, at least two of them, Ratcliffe, the CIA, and Gabbard from National Intelligence, perjured themselves in front of the House committee, which is also a crime. So, John, I really respect your point of view. I always do. But I'm not a buy-in. Call us again, please. Thanks for the call.
You know, Axios makes a great point this morning, the news aggregator, that talks about how this is kind of the theme of the Trump White House. As we know, he was accused, Trump was, of stashing nuclear secrets at Mar-a-Lago. That was the Jack Smith case that was thrown out of court by the judge in Florida. He remember at the beginning of his term in 2017, he revealed this highly classified information to the Russian foreign minister right in the Oval Office. And then he, in August of 2019, tweeted out a surveillance photo of an Iranian launch site that experts suspect was obtained from a classified satellite or drone. And then there was the weird thing where he showed off those highly confidential classified military documents at Mar-a-Lago to guests, kind of waving them around. Remember that?
How about the toilet?
Yeah, well, that was the stuff at Mar-a-Lago. That was where the supposed nuclear secrets was. Their point is that he's loose-lipped. That's their point.
Can someone do me a favor? Can we get people are not worked up enough about these emojis. Can we get a shot of this? This is a story, a terrific story written by Dana Milbank in the Washington Post, who cleverly then attaches emojis to everything he writes. I mean, look at this for a second. These are grown men. The first guy is the guy who's negotiating, Witkoff, with Putin directly, and the second one is the National Security Advisor. Fist, flag, fire. Mike, I mean, really? Really? 877-301-8970.
You'll be happy to know that a lot of the texters are texting multiple emojis.
I know they are, to torture me. I am fully aware of that.
The little faces. Jeff in Providence says, Hegseth puts the Peter in the Peter principle. To his credit, Hegseth has lasted 6 Scaramucci's so far. That was Scaramucci, the guy you see at
How many days? 10 days?
11. I think he lasted
days?
11 days. And it was the Times of the Washington Post that did kind of a retrospective of the rocky first months of Pete Hegseth's career as head of the Pentagon.
Can I get one last thing about this?
Rough road, Jim. Rough road.
Before we go back to the calls, if you read all of the transcript, which I hope all of you have done, at least skimmed it. The other thing, we're going to talk to Juliette Kayyem about all this at noon because she has the expertise, unlike us. How about them gratuitously trashing Europe? You know, it's one thing if you feel you're Trump, you want to trash him publicly to show what a tough guy you are. This is a private conversation with the top security officials, other than the president, on this messaging app. Mm-hmm. And two of them feel they have to go out of their way to trash Europe. Was it Vance that said?
Vance and Hegseth.
And it was Hegseth the one that said pathetic in capital letters.
He called him pathetic.
Right, to curry favor with Vance.
Here's a good question for one of the texters. If the Atlantic journalist is such a sleazebag and a moron, why the hell was he on the chat?
Yeah, well, that's good. We still don't know how he ended up on the thing. Do we know? We know Walls put him on it.
We don't know why.
We have no idea why.
877-301-8970. We're talking about emojis, but we're also talking about this screw-up by these various people that were on this chat yesterday, and some of them are denying that there was anything wrong with it. Kyra from Concord, what do you think?
Hi, Kyra.
Hi. Kira. Hi.
Oh, Kira,
Hi, Kira.
I'm sorry.
Hi, Kira. Sorry, it was Marjorie's fault.
Marjorie, I've only been listening to you all for
I know, we've only talked to you like 50 times.
Okay. I recognize your voice.
Okay.
It's me, Kira. It's
Whatever.
okay. Maybe I'm a little more jovial today or something, or nervous.
Whatever.
For that
What's
matter,
up, Kira?
For all of us, nationally and internationally.
Yeah, what's up?
Especially nationally.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm just saying that I had my father was in the service. He was in the National Guard, actually.
Uh-huh.
And he just recently passed on. But I know that he would be absolutely, if he's not looking down in heavens right now saying, what the hey? I can't imagine a sequel to this, but it's happening. So all we can do is our part. And as far as emojis, I mean, this is just absolutely so unprofessional. I mean, I know kids that would be able to be running this fine land better than they are. They would never, ever undo USA.
They'd also have better emojis, I think. Kira, thank you for your call as always. By the way, a ton of anonymous texters are texting, "Hey, Jim," and then a thumbs up emoji. Thank you for that. It really makes me feel really good. Thank you for supporting my position on this.
Yeah.
By the way, if people are unclear what's going on today, because there's another hearing, the other national, well, some of the same, Kash Patel and some of these others we talked about, yesterday were in front of the Senate, today they're in front of the House. That's one hearing, and there's a totally separate hearing that's going on, again, in front of the DOJ subcommittee, chaired by Marjorie Taylor Greene, which we'll summarize for you at 12:55. That's the one where the goal is to defund the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, NPR, and PBS. Jane in Concord. We got to take a break, Jane. Don't go away. We'll take you right after the break. We promise.
Okay, we're talking about this security breach where war plans were sent out to a reporter, and the people on the war plan chat were chatting where they weren't supposed to chat, and now they're lying about it. The number's 877-301-8097. You are listening to Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH, broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library.
It's time for Europe to rearm itself. That's the opinion of leaders like EU chief Ursula von der Leyen. Other experts know it's not going to be easy.
I think Europe is not prepared in any shape or form, despite the will and despite the rhetoric. It will take a lot of time.
The push to prepare Europe for war, next time on The World.
This afternoon at 3, here on GBH News 89.7.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you.
And the Office of the Massachusetts State Treasurer, the Unclaimed Property Division, is holding unclaimed funds from utility bills, uncashed paychecks, savings accounts, and more. To see if you have unclaimed money, you can visit findmassmoney.gov. And Celebrity Series, presenting What Makes It Great with Rob Capello. Capello and musicians shine a light on the songs of Simon and Garfunkel, April 5th at NEC's Jordan Hall. Tickets at celebrityseries.org.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Marjorie Egan, Jim Browdy. We're live at the library, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. If you're just tuning in, we're talking yet again today because there have been new developments, new disclosures by Jeffrey Goldberg, editor of The Atlantic, and obviously there's more testimony from the people involved in the Houthi PC small group. That was the messaging thread. On Signal, where our nation's top security people were found to have been openly discussing active war plans, apparently nothing was classified, they say. And we're also talking, at least I am talking, about how not only how appalling the whole situation is, but how appalling it is that these grown men with great responsibility were rallying each other on with emojis, which maybe I'm making too much of, but it matters to me.
An anonymous texter wants to know, Jim, is there an emoji for a crushed Tesla? If so, he wants it.
That's very
and
funny.
I did not realize this. A texter sent this, and we just checked it out here, thanks to Jamie, that Jeffrey Goldberg, the reporter for The Atlantic, left college to move to Israel, where he served in the Israeli Defense Forces during the first Intifada as a prison guard at a prison where Palestinian participants arrested in the uprising were held. He's the one that Trump called a sleazebag.
Yep.
Let's go to Jane in Concord. Hi, Jane.
Hello, Jane.
Hi again, guys.
Hi.
I wanted to remind everybody, I guess, that Ivanka Trump got in trouble for using her own personal device, even after her father campaigned about Hillary Clinton in the emails, and after Colin Powell also did the same thing, but we never hear her mentioned and rarely hear Colin Powell mentioned.
I didn't remember that. That obviously from the first term, because she's not serving the second term.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I didn't remember that.
And even the fact that she was in the first term serving at the White House, they got away with that because it was Trump's first year and you had to give him a chance no matter what he did wrong. But my other question for you now is, what do you think would be a good name for this problem? Because you said yesterday the Democrats should latch on to this. I heard it called Signal Gate just before your show started on AM
Not
radio.
Not bad. What else?
What about Chatgate?
I like it.
Emojigate?
I like it. Emojigate. Emojigate is.
I like that.
Makes me happy.
I like that.
Jane, thank you for for your call. You know,
we're getting so many emojis on the
people
texting.
Obviously like to make me unhappy, and I can live with that. 877-301-8097. 8970 is the number.
A lot of people are talking about how this is immaturity. It's like they're playing a video game. Nothing they do is based
exactly like that.
in reality. This is Linda from Quincy. They put lives at risk and lie. Gary says, why should we be surprised by this? They've denied January 6th events and the election. Through all we watched it happen on TV. We are in such a bad place. There was a story in the Globe this morning about people joke about going to get a citizenship in different countries. There was a story in the
What do you
Globe.
mean joke about it?
Well, say...
you mean if they have a dual citizenship?
Yeah.
Christopher Muthers, is that the piece you're talking about?
I don't know.
Well, he wrote about it. Yeah, go ahead.
I don't remember Christopher
Yeah.
Muthers. Sorry about that.
It's okay.
But going to different countries, and one of the feelings I think that people have is sort of like their own country's against them. That cutting down services. I mean, the stories about Social Security where people are going to have to go there in person. Lots of people are older. They're not close to Social Security offices. They don't know how to do things online. Talk about all these cuts and.
Do you say because there'll be far fewer people answering the phones? Is that which was hard enough to get through to begin with?
Yeah. Well, I think just in general, the idea that your country is out to get you, is not out to help you. It's out to hurt you. Is a very unusual feeling. I mean, if you're a person of color. The country's been out to get you for a long time. But I think this is kind of a shock to people that are not used to this kind of treatment.
Well, that's a good segue to what upsets me even more. Trump et al., meaning his people, are exactly who I think people knew they were. Whether you love Trump and his people or you can't stand Trump and his people, there are very few surprises. What's really disappointing to me is how few people who are supportive of a particular person, in this case Trump, or for 4 years Biden, are willing to say, I was wrong, or at least he is wrong on this. I mean, we talk a lot. David Axelrod, one of the highest profile Democrats in the country, obviously chief architect of the Obama campaign and chief aide to Obama. He'd be on CNN almost every night during the Biden campaign, criticizing Biden if it was appropriate, criticizing other Democrats. That's called honesty. And the fact that people are so either scared or mesmerized by Trumpism that they're not willing to call something out that is as cuts to the core as much about what we care about, protecting people who put their lives on the line for us, is just really depressing. It's really depressing. Rich in Waltham, thanks for the call. Hi.
Just to identify myself a little bit, I've been a registered independent voter for all my entire life. I'm 70 years old.
Yep.
I have voted historically both sides of the aisle.
Good.
Until Trump came on the scene, and I support President Trump 110%.
Okay.
Was there a problem with this episode? Absolutely, a major problem. And what I've seen on TV so far, they've admitted to that. I mean, I'm sure they're denying some issues here and there, but to me, it's no different than when Hillary Clinton on the Benghazi issue. I remember her testifying before Congress. She finally said before the Congress that, what difference does it make? Well, it made a difference to a lot of people on the Republican side of the aisle because 4 people died during that.
Rich, can I ask you a question? What you just did is called whataboutism, meaning it is impossible to respond to something your candidate did without criticizing another one. How about let's just stay on Donald Trump?
When did Donald? That happens on both sides of the aisle.
Fine, and we actually on this show, if you listen, Rich, which it sounds like you do, try to call it out as honestly as possible. We were not Hillary Clinton. Rich, let me finish your sentence. Rich.
Go ahead, Jeff.
We were not Hillary Clinton fans here, and if you've listened, I think you knew that. That's number one. Number two, not only did Donald Trump never in the last few days take accountability for any of this, he does what he always does. The one guy who not only did nothing wrong, but actually cared about the security of the country, Jeffrey Goldberg, he saw fit to call a sleazebag. That's what Trump does. When he can't defend himself, he attacks Joe Biden or somebody else. What's that?
Jim, and that's what I'm saying. For 4 years during this past election, what did they call Donald Trump? They called him Nazi and Hitler. It is a bad situation. I mean, I look at Bill Maher. I watch Bill Maher. I enjoy Bill Maher. He's going to the White House to visit Trump just to keep that communication open.
Yep.
And I think that's great. It's got to stop. Both sides have to stop.
We got it.
Just try.
We got it. We appreciate your call, Rich. Thanks.
The sad thing is, there is a lot of comparison between the move toward authoritarianism in other countries, including Germany, and what is going on now, where you undermine people's confidence in the press, you go after universities. It is the same sort of pattern, Rich, and that's you could go back to the McCarthy era, but McCarthy was only a senator. He wasn't the president of the United States. And so I think that we are in a new place there, and I think that's why some people have compared him, maybe they shouldn't to Hitler, but certainly to the way the Nazis came to power. It's very similar.
That, by the way, that last thing is really important for people who've been critical of the Nazi comparisons. That piece, when we had Adam Gopnik on from The New Yorker, and he was reviewing that book, that was not about Hitler once he was in office and what he did, obviously, and the horror of the millions of murders. It was about his rise to power, and there were a lot of parallels.
And you know what one of the most interesting parallels was? That back in the day, the people that were in Germany at that time, the other politicians, thought of Hitler as a buffoon, thought he was a weirdo, thought he was never going to get anywhere, thought they were going to be able to manipulate him. How similar is that to what Republicans thought the first time around? Yeah. With Paul Ryan and Mitch McConnell, they all thought they were going to be able to manipulate Trump, and in second time around, that hasn't worked.
Before we take a break, an anonymous texter, I think, nailed it. Pete Hegseth's scandal should be called Whiskey Leaks.
Oh,
that is actually brilliant, and I'm sorry that we didn't come up with that.
That is a great one, yeah.
Pretty good.
Of course, off WikiLeaks.
I hope we don't have to explain that.
Well, just in case somebody didn't get it. Sometimes I'm thick as a brick and I don't get it either. So anyway, okay, we're moving on.
By the way, and apologies, there are zillions of people texting and calling. We just can only do so many. We're going to discuss these very same things with Juliette Kayyem at noon.
Yes, but we're going to take a break now and talk about the art world with GBH Executive Arts Editor Jared Bowen. We're going to talk about Conan O'Brien roasting Trump the other night without actually mentioning Trump's name, and this great new movie that got huge standing ovations out of the Sundance Film Festival. We're going to talk about that as well. You're listening to Boston Public Radio 89.7 GBH, live from the Boston Public Library and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
I'm Jared Bowen. Today on The Culture Show, what makes for a good life? Meaning a long, happy, and healthy one. Harvard researchers have been studying this since 1938, and the simple but surprising answer is relationships. Harvard's Dr. Robert Waldinger, who currently runs the study, joins us. Plus, director Igor Goliak reflects on his innovative theater company marking its 15th anniversary. Tune in for that and more on The Culture Show today at 2 on 89.7 GBH.
Support for GBH comes from you.
And Gentle Giant Moving and Storage Company, offering local, long-distance, office, and piano moving, with 23 locations throughout New England and across the country. More information at gentlegiant.com. And the Box Center, presenting Riverdance 30, The New Generation, a special anniversary tour, playing April 8th through the 13th at the Box Center Wang Theater. Tickets at boxcenter.org.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Marjorie Egan, Jim Browdy. We're live at the library, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. Now joined by Jared Bowen. Jared, of course, Executive Arts Editor for GBH News, host of The Culture Show. It airs daily at 2 o'clock right after us on 89.7 GBH. Hello, Jared Bowen.
Hey there, great to be with you.
And you as well.
So Brookline's own Conan O'Brien was down at the Kennedy Center in Washington, D.C., getting a big award. Tell us about his performance. What did you think?
Well, this is very significant. He was receiving the Mark Twain Prize, which always is awarded in Washington and has happened at the Kennedy Center. We've been having this ongoing debate about what people do if they disagree with the administration and the administration's policy regarding the arts, as they've constrained the Kennedy Center and as the administration has populated the board strictly through partisan lines. And we saw what happens if somebody takes the stage and has criticism to say. So, and again, this is like the Pulitzer Prize of comedy, and this year it's being awarded to Conan O'Brien, and it just happened. It's airing on Netflix on May 4th. And Conan O'Brien took aim at the administration through his own Conan O'Brien way, which was, I think, through great intelligence and elegance, because he did this all without ever acknowledging the president and naming him or any other administration official. That's not the same for other people who were on the stage, like Sarah Silverman and a host of people who had things to say. But when Conan O'Brien took the stage, he talked about Mark Twain and the values that Mark Twain had, how he hated hated bullies and racism, how he was suspicious of populism, jingoism, imperialism, and the money-obsessed mania of the Gilded Age. Of course, all things that apply to our age. This is why history always repeats itself, why it's a prologue. And he is just being acclaimed since this weekend's ceremonies for what he's communicated on stage at the Kennedy Center, which, as we've talked about, so many people have retreated from and don't want to take a stage there.
Well, I think you both know that one of my favorite comics is Robert Smigel, who no one ever heard of, who is the voice and creator of Triumph, the comic insult dog.
Oh, gosh.
Who got his start on Conan O'Brien. And if you've never watched Triumph going to the opening of Star Wars or Michael Jackson's trial, I mean, it is brilliant. He was the MC, the comic insult dog. It's a hand puppet for those who haven't seen it. And because of, should we be here, should we not be here, his opening line is, "Thank you for coming and shame on you for being here," which I think sort of covered both sides. It was great.
You know what I loved? I loved the John Mulaney joke. He was one of the comedians that was speaking there. And he said, "It's an honor to be here at the Kennedy Center, or as it will be known next week, the Roy Cohn Pavilion for big, strong men who love cats."
So we've talked about this, and this is what I was talking about. For my concern was with people, there's no right answer here, as I keep saying. If you decide that you don't, I know, I can't believe you've changed you're not changed your mind after this.
No, this is the funniest, most famous comedians in the world. If people of that stature go to the Kennedy Center, it's going to get attention. 99% of the people who go to the Kennedy Center, no one even knows they were there, and all they did was make money for this iteration of the Kennedy Center. That's my case.
Well, my case is that, so as I started to say, so there's no right answer. If you feel like it doesn't align with your values, you want to cancel like Issa Rae did, absolutely. Everybody makes a statement.
Peter Wolf canceled.
Peter Wolf and others have decided, and Lin-Manuel Miranda decided to not stage Hamilton there and withdrawing the revenue that would go to the Kennedy Center. But I think there's also a value in artists taking the stage and not ceding it, not walking away and abandoning this forum, because the Kennedy Center is so renowned in this country. Although there was interesting, a New York Times reporter who grew up in Washington said, "This is news to me that the Kennedy Center, which was presenting sheer madness," I don't know why you had to take down sheer madness necessarily, but why it's so preeminent. But I don't think that's true. I think if you're outside of Washington and you look at it, it is a venue that people grew up wanting to appear on its stage. But if you take the stage and you don't abandon it, there's value in that too. And that's exactly what happened with this prize.
Yeah, David Letterman, Adam Sandler, Will Ferrell, Stephen Colbert, Nikki Glaser, Kamal Glazer, sorry, and Mulaney that I already mentioned. So I mean, that was a
Triumph
big
the comic
roster.
Martin Short doing
Martin
a
Short,
very
that's
clever
right.
video.
Sarah Silverman, as you mentioned before. So it was a pretty impressive group.
Okay, so let's talk about an issue I'd not thought about: the future of art and the climate crisis, obviously in part coming out of the nightmare in Los Angeles. Fill us in.
I had thought a lot about this, actually, and I was hoping that this wouldn't bear out, and it has. So if you think about Los Angeles and the fires that just happened, you think about the population of Los Angeles, where so many wealthy people have homes there, and it's an art-loving community out in California. So many people work in the entertainment business. There are so many museums out there. So I kept wondering, and slowly have seen this confirmed, what has been lost when you have major art collectors filling their homes with major art. And so the Washington Post recently had a story about a man who had about 340 works of art, and he had to make a choice as the fires were raging and coming closer and closer, and he only grabbed three paintings. And he took basically his Warhol paintings, leaving behind Keith Haring, other Warhol paintings, Damien Hirst, major works. So this is a question now of what happens when you see art destroyed like this, because people are beginning to describe this as the most destructive force against art since World War II.
I know.
Because of how much was lost.
Horrible.
I'll pause for a moment and say I love process, and so when I watched that Joan Rivers documentary a number of years ago now, because she was still alive, and it talked about how she wrote a joke every single day, and then she inserted it in basically this equivalent of a card catalog, and these were her files, and then she would go through her index, David Letterman or Donald Trump or bored housewife, and she'd have the joke for that she'd written for decades and decades and decades. And I know that after she died, a lot of that went to Melissa Rivers' house, And
her kid.
Melissa Rivers' home burned. And when I had Margaret Cho on the show recently, she talked. I was asking her a question about Joan Rivers because she was a great influence and a great friend to Margaret Cho. She said that there's a good chance that a lot of Joan Rivers' manuscripts and that those jokes have been lost because of the fire.
Can I ask you a couple of things here that I am embarrassed to say I hadn't thought much about before? One, what I had thought about is the discomfort that I sort of feel that a unique, legendary piece of art is owned by an individual and it's in their house, and that is potentially the end of it. And then the flip side was, in this piece in the Washington Post that we're all referencing, they say what a number of very wealthy art collectors do, not to address what I was just talking about, but to address security, is they either allow the original piece to continue to be displayed for the public, or at least stored in a place where it's not going to be burnt to a crisp, and they have a high quality copy. And I'm sure if I had a chance to have an original Warhol soup can versus a copy, I'd probably prefer the original. But isn't that a decent splitting of the baby that also addresses this climate concern?
Well, that's one theory, and if you're going to spend $60 million for a painting and you're okay with living with a copy because the real painting is in storage, that's okay. But this is also a moment where I think the art world gets gross, and you're not so attuned to the art, because for me, I love looking at a painting, looking at the examination of the brushstrokes and knowing that Van Gogh, as you'll see right now at the MFA, this is what he was doing, this is what he's trying to express. You just certainly don't get that in a copy. And then it's obvious that you've bought that painting because you're looking to resell it someday, or it's a tax haven, because this is what we've also learned, is that so many of these paintings have been sent off to storage facilities in Switzerland and other places where they don't have to pay the tax after they buy it.
Okay, but right now, I don't know if it's an apt comparison, because I just thought of it, and feel free to say it's ridiculous. You can't, National Seashore on the Cape, no matter how wealthy you are, you can't buy a piece of the National Seashore. The theory being, all three of us who couldn't afford to buy a piece of it should be able to enjoy it. I can't enjoy the Warhol that was in that guy's house with 339 other pieces of art. And so while he has a right, I'm not saying he has a right to own it, isn't there isn't it everybody's stuff kind of thing, same sort of way?
I think I understand what you're saying, that this is just how the world works, or you think it should change?
No, I'm saying the opposite. When it comes to land, like a national forest or a national seashore, that guy can't own it, but he can own the Van Gogh, he can own the
almost
world.
Anything, though. Like the collection of the cars that came to the MFA, the DeLorean cars. Why should we not all get to see the DeLorean cars?
Well, I know, but I guess you could say about that.
Yeah,
so,
I don't know, that's a tough one.
It's just the way of the world. I don't think that's ever going to change. I mean, there's also this interesting discussion about creating a national art registry. So
so we at least know where everything is?
Exactly. If you buy this Van Gogh painting, then you have to enter it, and people know where it's gone, because basically when museums have to put together a show and they want to track down loans, they want to tell the story. We'll keep going with Van Gogh, for instance. We know that there is this one illustration that existed of this family from such and such a time. They do the work. They do the investigative work often, if it's not already recorded, to figure out, okay, this passed from this hand to this dealer, and then this family bought it, and this is where it exists today. And so people are saying, well, it would be easier for museums. It would be easier to have a sense of the masterpieces in our midst if there was a national art registry. But a lot of people say this is too big brotherish. We don't want to have a national record.
It's also easier for thieves. It's great for thieves.
So it just becomes very complicated, and it's more so now that we know that the opportunity for destruction is greater because of climate.
There is a different question, which I thought is what you were going to towards the National Seashore, that whether it is ethical anymore with climate change to even keep places in the most threatened by climate, like fire zones or like floodplains or the path of a hurricane. And they also talk about the Getty Museum, where they survived because they spent all these millions of dollars on constant brushing and irrigation and emergency response and all this extensive landscaping around the museum, which most people obviously can't afford them. Maybe you can afford it.
Well, no, I think you can afford, because I think one of the biggest things that helped the Getty was the fact that they had cleared the brush, and so there wasn't anything to catch fire nearby. That's not to say that if the embers are flying, which of course that was happening in Los Angeles too, that it's not going to light your roof on fire. But I was thinking that basically this collector that we were talking about that had the 340 works of art, he's essentially a museum.
Yes.
And why didn't he take these standards,
I don't know,
these museum standards, and apply it to his own home? So I think that this is also something that's going to be driven by the insurance industry, industry because they're going to stop insuring these works of art in places like California or near a seashore.
Okay, so we were going to discuss, which I was dying to discuss, Trump being upset about his portrait is not pretty enough in the Colorado State House. But there are two things that I'm really interested in. They're going to disappear by the next time you're here. So we're going to skip Trump. Look it up yourself. It's another incredible story. Ballad of Wallis Island, to me,
sounds great.
I never heard of it till yesterday. It sounds spectacular. What is this? And it's a single day showing, March 28th?
No, it's in theaters on Friday.
Okay, we could have held it, but go ahead. What is it?
Well, it's nice to have people have a reason to go to the theater because you can't stream this right away. So, and I think that this is a movie we all need right now. It's very, very lovely, and it started from a short film that the writers and performers Tim Key and Tom Basden, a British pair, wrote years ago, but they've expanded it. So basically, you have a millionaire, and he's become a millionaire by winning the lottery, and he lives on this remote Welsh island, and he decides one of the ways he wants to splurge is to reunite his favorite folk duo for a small concert. And by small concert, I mean they're going to bring them here, and it's going to be an audience of one.
Yeah.
They're just going to come and perform for him. But becomes a little complicated because this group has broken up. It's a little bit like people wonder if it's based on Joan Baez and Bob Dylan. When you have figures of that ilk, these are fictional characters, of course. And she, by the way, is played by Carey Mulligan. And so, first of all, you have them arriving on this island that is difficult to negotiate. The millionaire is quite an oddball in the most hilarious ways. And then you have to be reunited with your ex-lover, not to mention ex-artistic partner, who is now also married. And so all of this is happening on this little island, and it's just a lovely movie. It's beautiful.
And he just lost his wife, right? The guy that's staging the concert.
Oh, you're giving a plot point, yeah.
Sorry.
Okay, so
this
by
is
the
why
way,
it's even more moving, yeah.
the ballad, if you're looking it up, it's Wallis, W-A-L-L-I-S Island. Here's a clip from it. In this sound, the Ballad of Wallis Island, you're going to hear characters played by Carey Mulligan, Tom Basden, and Tim Key. They're all enjoying a sunset. Here it is.
There she goes. To paraphrase the Beatles, there goes the sun. Fan of the Beatles, Herb?
Can we just...
Oh, I bet you are.
Watch the
I
sunset.
bet you bloody are.
Yes, I like the Beatles. Let's watch the sunset, OK?
We were lucky enough once to see the bootleg Beatles. Brilliant. You seen them, Herb? Something else. Tight as a drum.
OK.
Hit after hit.
Can we just please...
Can we just please
watch the
appreciate
sunset?
this damn sunset?
Even that sounds spectacular.
But yeah, it's got all these lovely elements. Being locked on an island with a super fan, but also being tied to the music you love from childhood that stays with you for the rest of your life and kind of informs you. It's just, and knowing that this started off as a short film in 2007, so this is a story these two men have been thinking about for almost 20 years, and now they can make this feature film, which was a hit at Sundance.
So we're going to feel soothed and what?
I think happy at the end of the day.
Okay.
It's very funny. You'll feel soothed, and it's a light alternative to so much of what's happening
Happy.
right
Do
now.
you remember Happy or not?
Vaguely.
Vaguely. Okay, so that opens March 28th. I was wrong. The next thing is at the Huntington, Triumph of Love until April 6th. Tell us about it.
Yeah, this is also really enjoyable. So this is based on a French play from several centuries ago that's been updated, and here we find a princess who it knows that she's not necessarily the rightful heir to the throne, that the actual rightful heir is a prince who has been spirited away to be protected and is being raised by his aunt and uncle. And so she seeks him out. And so in doing so, she has to sort of penetrate this guarded family who haven't seen a lot of love and happiness there, because this is also about the age of enlightenment and reasoning, so they don't give in to emotion very easily. But she manages to woo them all over she's very well intentioned. She's not trying to keep him from the throne, she's trying to embrace him. And so we see this happen. This is a farce. It's very funny, it's very moving, lots of great emotion. I think it's really directed. It's also a beautiful, beautiful set, because they harken back to the age of enlightenment and beautiful skies and clouds, and let's look up and let's look forward and move forward. And so you see this all come together, and what I think with great directing, great performances, you kind of soar out of the theater after you see this, because again, it is about breaking down these barriers to find love where it didn't exist before.
Okay, the beauty of your speedy review of Triumph of Love is we can go back to the portrait of Trump.
I knew you couldn't resist.
The beauty of this is there is a milquetoasty portrait of Trump along with the portraits of every other president in the Colorado State House. Donald Trump, of course, has nothing better to do, so he is posting about how outrageous it is and has to come down. And of course, he is blaming the Democratic governor of Colorado, Jared Polis.
Nothing to do with it.
The only problem is, right, he had nothing to do with it, and it was commissioned by Republicans in Colorado. So what's going on with this really important issue, Jared Bowen?
Yeah, so for a while, there was no painting of Donald Trump in the Colorado State House because this is a space where you'll find portraits of most of the other presidents. And then somebody at some point put up a painting of Vladimir Putin in the place of Donald Trump. The Republican Party in Colorado didn't like that, so they got about $10,000 together. They commissioned an artist to paint this portrait of Donald Trump. She had also done one of President Obama. She said that she wanted to give this sort of a neutral vibe so that when people were looking at this 30 or 40 years hence, he would just kind of be part of the whole of men up there. Well,
go ahead.
So then, for some reason, when the president maybe should have been paying attention to defense issues and who was communicating what, instead was taking to Truth Social to say that the radical left governor of Colorado, Jared Polis, right spelling of Jared, by the way, had commissioned this portrait, and it was really horrible, and it was really bad, and it needs to be taken down. He doesn't want it on view there, which, of course, has drawn everybody's attention to this rendering, where it is a fairly, as Sebastian Smee in the Washington Post said, it's a fairly jowly Donald Trump.
Looks like he has the mumps.
It's not as orange as he is either. I'm sure that bothered him.
It's not macho enough, right? I mean, it doesn't make him look scowling and tough and powerful.
You guys are missing the point. The point is not how horrible it is. The point is, this guy has the most. There it is. Oh, it is jowly.
It is jowly.
He has the most burdensome.
I don't blame him, actually.
He has the
My
most
sister had a
burdensome
gerbil
job
that
in the
looked
world.
just like that.
Yeah,
Imagine
horrible.
he's sitting in the White House and he decides to focus on the portrait painted of him in the halls of the Colorado State House.
Didn't you read about Winston Churchill?
What about him?
He had a painting of him he didn't like.
Oh, he did have that.
He had
taken
it
down.
burned. Yeah.
Yeah, he's not the only one.
So,
I'm on the
Put that up
Donald's,
again. Can we
I'm
see
on the
that again,
Donald's
please?
side on this one. I don't blame him. I mean,
What do you
come
guys
on.
think of this? Good
Horrible.
out there?
Terrible.
People love it at the library.
There's
It's
zero.
beautiful.
Let me narrate the response.
Captures him exactly.
That's the response. Zero response. So, I mean, this is the point that, everybody doesn't like a picture of themselves.
Most pictures.
Most pictures,
Yeah.
exactly.
Why are some people so photogenic and
That's
some
an
people are
excellent
not?
question for him, especially
I think
the culture guy.
I think it's symmetry.
I think it is symmetry. It's
It
all
is.
about lighting
Yeah.
and angle
Symmetry.
and interpretation.
Why doesn't the photograph? That's not a photograph. Why doesn't the photograph just look who you look?
Because some people, I noticed with my children, I have 3 children, one of them has never taken a bad picture in her whole life. And the other ones, they're okay, but they're not like her, I don't know what it is. Maybe it's her teeth. I don't know what it is. My youngest daughter always looks great in pictures.
Or the eyes.
Or the eyes. But I think it has to do with symmetry. Those of us who are lopsided, it doesn't
You're
come
not
out.
lopsided.
I am lopsided. I don't want to go into details. I'm lopsided.
You, the one who gets compared to Diane Keaton and Nicole
That's right.
Kidman?
That's right.
Are
That's right.
think you're lopsided?
Well, I am lopsided, but I don't want to
See
detail.
what just happened? You read the thing on the Comrex?
No.
The artist was just deported. It's just. It's really sad.
This
She's
poor
not even an
artist.
American. She's a
No,
Brit.
but I could go back to the point. I agree with Jim. I mean, everybody hates their port, but really, of course, this is another distraction from everything else is going on. Let me just concentrate talk about what's happening in Colorado.
Jim brought it up.
Well, you notice he had a more normal portrait the first time around.
He did?
The second time around, he's really looking mean. He's got that scowl
Was that the
on his
mugshot?
face.
You're talking about the mugshot?
No, his portrait now, his official portrait,
didn't
is
know that.
very
It's
scowling
kind of
and mean.
tilted down with the camera.
That's right. It's a power pose, Jim. It's
okay.
a macho power pose. He scowls. He likes
Okay.
that. This is a chipmunk kind of deal, and
Yeah.
he didn't like it.
Well, it does look like a chipmunk
Yeah.
or a squirrel.
Would you want to look
That's
like
what I
a
said. It looks like my
Squirrel. You
sister's
said a squirrel.
gerbil from
It
childhood.
does, exactly.
Yeah, I don't agree with
Maybe
him
he's
on
got
much,
acorns in there. How do you know?
I take it down. I would say
Okay,
I'm not doing
that's
that.
it.
I'm not having mumps and squirrel cheeks in the Colorado State House.
Okay, Margaret.
Okay?
Siding with Trump.
I am. I got to
think
call him as I
anybody's-
see him, Jim.
Yeah, you are calling.
Coming up after the noon news, Juliette
we'll talk to you
Kayyem, our
later.
national
Okay.
security expert,
Bye.
is going to join us. We have been
Jared
speaking
Bowen,
with
thank
Jared
you.
Bowen, executive vice editor for GBH News, host of The Culture Show, which airs at 2 o'clock right here after us on 89.7. Jared's going to come back later in the show to tell us what he's doing this afternoon at 2 o'clock. Meanwhile, like I said, Juliette Kayyem on the administration's threat to national security with these signal chats and the Russian.
You're listening to Boston Public Radio with Jim Browdy and Marjorie Egan. Just ahead, more smart conversation about what's going on in our community. That's right after an NPR news break, here on GBH News 89.7.
Funding for our programs comes from you.
And Babson College, where you can earn a part-time MBA for your full-time life at the school ranked number 2 best college in the U.S. by the Wall Street Journal. Graduate courses offered online or in person with remote options. Babson.edu/part-time. If we restore nature and let it thrive, can we turn the tide of climate change before it's too late? And is it time to look at our planet in a whole new way? Watch The Future of Nature tonight at 10 on GBH2.
You're listening to 89.7 WGBH HD1 Boston. Online at gbhnews.org. GBH News. What matters to you?
Squad Mass will celebrate South Coast Rail's grand return after a little more than half a century, plus MBTA derailments and reaction to Mayor Wu's apparent backpedaling on bike lanes. That's all ahead. Second hour of Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Lakshmi Singh. The Atlantic has published the group chat in which U.S. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth provided specific details of imminent U.S. airstrikes in Yemen earlier this month. As NPR's Greg Myrie explains, the magazine is reporting on why it decided to share more detailed information 2 days after its editor-in-chief Jeffrey Goldberg reported he was accidentally included in the Signal group chat with senior-level Trump administration officials.
The Atlantic magazine said that initially it decided not to publish the details of the U.S. airstrikes in Yemen because they thought that would be irresponsible. But then President Trump and members of his administration said that there was no classified information in this Signal chat. So then the Atlantic has now decided to go ahead and publish the full text with this timeline provided by Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth, and then carried on with updates saying when planes and drones were taking off to carry out attacks, and then the initial assessment of those attacks.
NPR's Greg Myrie reporting. The CEO of NPR, Catherine Marr, who is testifying on Capitol Hill in a separate matter, chairs the board of the Signal Foundation, the nonprofit that supports the messaging app. Remote federal workers ordered to report back to the office say they're encountering a slew of on-site hurdles. NPR's Shannon Bond reports some employees say the mandate feels like a way to pressure them to quit.
Millions of employees across federal agencies are being ordered back into the office full-time to comply with President Trump's executive order terminating all remote work. Federal workers say in many cases their offices just aren't equipped for the influx. There aren't enough desks and computer monitors. Internet connections and Wi-Fi service are slow or unavailable. They're running out of toilet paper and soap in the bathrooms. The workers NPR spoke with didn't want to use their names because they fear retaliation from the Trump administration for speaking out. They say the chaos and confusion are demoralizing. At the same time, agencies are also planning large-scale job cuts. Shannon Bond, NPR News.
Russia is demanding sanctions relief in exchange for its participation in a U.S.-brokered ceasefire deal in the Black Sea region. Ukraine's president says his country has agreed to stop using force in the Black Sea. Here's NPR's Charles Maines in Moscow.
In a statement, the Kremlin said the Black Sea ceasefire deal would only come into force once the U.S. had lifted sanctions-related entanglements to Russian maritime trade. That includes a return of Russia's state agricultural bank to international payment systems, access for Russian sea vessels to foreign ports, and lifting what Moscow says are problems ensuring Russian cargo. In effect, the Kremlin is demanding the U.S. resolve Russian complaints that doomed an earlier United Nations brokered deal, which tried to get Russian and Ukrainian grain and fertilizer out to world markets in the first year of the war. President Trump says his administration is studying the Russian proposals. Charles Maines, NPR News, Moscow.
This is NPR.
Good afternoon. With the latest from the GBH newsroom, I'm Henry Santoro. A Tufts graduate student is in ICE custody after being detained near the school's campus yesterday. Ramisa Öztürk's arrest was witnessed by neighbors who alerted the Muslim Justice League. Fatima Ahmad is the league's executive director.
They basically saw these people waiting for Ramisa, who was walking down the sidewalk, and then suddenly surround her. You can hear some screaming, I think, from her. They, take her backpack and handcuff her and take her.
Ahmad says Ozturk's personal information had recently been shared by Canary Mission, a pro-Israel organization that posts personal information about pro-Palestine activists. Tufts says it's aware of Ozturk's detention and says the government is revoking her student visa. ICE did not immediately respond to a request for comment. Well, after the Brookline School Committee voted to eliminate Brookline School's Equity Office, a group organized by the Brookline Community Foundation is raising funds to bring back at least one of the positions that was eliminated. According to Brookline News, the group has already raised $85,000 out of the needed $205,000. Jody Fortuna, the district's deputy superintendent of teaching and learning, says if they do reach their goal, the money will go towards an assistant director position in the Office of Educational Equity and restore the program within the K through 8 schools in Brookline. 47 degrees in Boston right now. We're looking at a cloudy day today. I'm Henry Santoro. This is GBH News.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Progressive Insurance. Progressive is looking for individuals in a variety of career fields who want to help build a culture of inclusiveness. More information, including application, at progressive.com/careers.
Houston Browdy, I am Marjorie Egan. Welcome to hour number 2 of Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH. We are broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library, and we are streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. Hello again, Jim.
Hello there, Marjorie. We're joined now at the library desk by national security expert Juliette Kayyem. Juliette is the former Assistant Secretary for Homeland Security under President Obama, faculty chair of the Homeland Security Program at Harvard's Kennedy School of Government, and most importantly for today's discussion, she works for that sleazebag over at the Atlantic, Jeffrey Goldberg. Juliette, it's great to see you. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you. It's so great to be here. Thanks, everyone. And you know, for the record, I'm a contributing writer. I know nothing.
Okay.
That's the truth about contributing writers.
Well, you are also our national security expert.
Yes.
You know a lot about that. So what do you make,
talk to that. Yeah.
What do you make about Pete Hegseth and the national security people, including
Whiskey Leaks is one of our.
I was just saying to Jim, like social media got fun again.
Yeah,
like people got their sense of humor back. We've been everyone's been kind of like so nasty.
That's right. Whiskey Leaks with the war plans and the reporter, your boss there on the line or whatever he is to you.
And those not following along, you know, minute by minute, as the three of us have, the Atlantic released additional, all of them actually, most of them, shots of the text exchange that was happening on Signal about the Yemen military action this morning, and did so, I think, and have said publicly as well as been on air saying, did so because the White House reaction yesterday wasn't, oh my gosh, this was a huge mistake, we're going to review it, we're going to get better. It was, the crazy one was, it wasn't classified. They knew what was on the text exchange. They knew that it was classified. And that they want us to focus on how successful the Yemen attack was. I want to start with the second one. I was supportive of Biden going after the Houthis. I was supportive of Trump going after the Houthis. And we have to protect our navigation. And it wasn't a spectacularly difficult military action as far as these go. It was not going into Pakistan to kill bin Laden. This was essentially, basically just air missiles. That being said, the idea that what Hegseth put to sort of, I think, impress his peers, because that's the only way to explain it, on Slack, which is an encrypted platform. For those of you who don't know how it works, is you
Signal.
Excuse me. Yeah. You download it on your phone. It's encrypted, so you have some assurances that what you're doing, won't be hacked. It's not on your office system, for example. It is not perfect, and the Department of Defense, ironically, just a couple weeks ago, warned the Pentagon that Signal was not may be compromised. What's more important to remember, because everyone has to understand the technology of what was going on, how absolutely outrageous this was, is that the signal was downloaded on their personal phones. So the personal phones we know are not as secure as the government phones. So they did this, and then they're doing all of their talk. And so on the technological side is just sort of shocking that an entire apparatus to secure information, let's not even get to the classified part, to secure information was just bypassed on personal phones. The second is, of course, whether the information was classified. I will tell you, I'm not a lawyer, and I am a lawyer, but I'm not a national security lawyer. Okay. I will tell you, as a recipient of classified information, this is like not even a close call. Like, you're going to hear people say, well, it was this action or whatever. This information was released before the action. So, and he's releasing it hours or a half hour before. And there was no reason for this group on Signal to ever have that information. I think people are sort of forgetting this. Like, I've been in that room, right? And there is no reason that group, the chief of staff, the deputy chief of staff, would never be in on the minute that we're going to drop or whatever. Those are tactical operational decisions. You don't want the political people saying, well, we have to do it after this TV show or whatever. You let the military make its operational plans on its own. And I don't know if Hegseth survives or not, but he's clearly the fall guy. I mean, he's clear. If there is going to be a fall guy, if they cannot keep this if they cannot move forward, the White House will need a fall guy. It does not appear to be Mike Waltz who brought in Jeffrey Goldberg. It appears that it's Hegseth. And as you both know from the beginning, I will. It's just desserts.
When you said a minute ago, you didn't use this terminology, but it was sort of like a bunch of bros trying to impress each other. The part of it where that was most evident to me, we said this at 11 o'clock, so apologies for repeating myself, but you have the expertise, is when they were going out of their way. This is about shipping in the Red Sea, which is a more important thing, which I didn't know till a few days ago, to European countries than to us. And they have to go out of their way, even in a private conversation, to impress each other about how tough they are by trashing Europe.
And then that's the J.D. Vance.
That was Vance, followed up by, in capital letters, Hegseth saying it's pathetic that we have to cover for Europe. I mean, and also, not that European leaders have respect for us anymore anyway. Doesn't this further degrade the relationship?
Yeah, and that's exactly it. We're so focused on obviously the technology and the military operations, but your point is day 3 and day 4 story, which is there was content shared. And Marjorie and I were just laughing only because Marco Rubio is really smart. Like, Marco Rubio is put on this. All he seems to do is add a name of someone at the State Department who's going to be on what's called the high side, classified side, and get this information, and then he retreats. And I was like, that is a smart man. But he
like when he was in the White House, when
exactly,
the
he's shrinking into the couch.
Right.
But he is going to have to carry sort of the consequences of the content of this, which is how transactional, even when they think no one's watching, how transactional this White House is. Basically, what J.D. Vance is saying is, we're going to monetize our military action. In other words, the United States has the United States' only interest is in getting paid back in protecting the Suez. This is an important mission for the United States. The reason why we have such a big Navy is because we view securing, maritime transportation as in our national interest, not because the Europeans are trading. And here's the crazy. This is how not smart they are. Although Michael Walls, the national security advisor, picks up on it. Is they're making these claims by where the boats are going. So they're saying, well, the Europeans benefit, 80% of the traffic and we only 20%. But that means how little they know about maritime transportation. A lot of these boats go to Europe and then go into smaller ships across the transatlantic to the United States. So we actually don't know how much cargo we benefit from. I'm getting into my navigation speak, but I was just saying, like, we're going to own this for a long time, and it satisfies the world's priors about this team. Arrogant, stupid, careless,
drunk.
Well, that's the thing.
I don't know.
When you mentioned Hegseth, that he may be the fall guy, he was over his skis when he went to Ukraine, talking about the borders of Ukraine, what Russia was going to get, what Ukraine was going to get, talking about, our position with NATO, whether we're going to pull out or not run NATO anymore. And then he's in this very kind of, it's so funny. You think about women going into jobs versus men going into jobs, and this is kind of a stereotypical thing, but a lot of times women get a promotion to something and they're worried, are they qualified enough? Can they do the job?
Yeah, head down, do the work.
Head down, do the work. And this guy, a weekend host at Fox News, as we know.
Not even prime time, as I say.
Who did a lousy job at the two companies, used to run with like 12 people each or something like that. He's over there on the tarmac. We didn't share any war plans. We didn't share war plans. We didn't share any war plans. When you got the war plans right there in the black and white, the arrogance. I mean, where do these guys get this kind of?
That's why Hegseth in particular, I think. If you look at who might fall, it will be him. The sort of unqualified toxic masculinity, as I've come to describe it. It's not like maybe I can handle qualified toxic masculinity.
He's going to bully his way through.
Right. No one look at how unqualified I am. Just to remind everyone, so exceptionally unqualified, it was unclear whether he would get through until the last minute. I noticed that Senator Collins was sick yesterday. Did you notice this?
No,
yeah. Well, I hope she's feeling better. And the woman who
because she supported him,
and just the whole thing. I mean, I'm so tired of the whole thing. And Hegseth then has spent 80% of his time essentially scrubbing websites for any mention of a black or female hero. Right. And that has, as CNN has reported, that has engendered incredible ill will at the Pentagon, including amongst senior military officials who are saying, what a freaking waste of our time. Like, it's just a waste of our time.
Can I tell you, the reason they're not ever going after him, we got to move on, is because of all the cabinet members, I would say he is number one most sycophantic.
Yeah, that may be true. And best looking.
One last thing. We got to move on, but one last thing to serve my personal desires here. The emojis bother you, or they didn't bother you? You don't care?
I mean, of course it. I'm an emoji person, but I'm not an emoji person at work.
Juliette.
At work, I have a work personality, and I have the other. Although Jamie, your producer, falls in between the both, and I heart him.
Does?
I occasionally heart you. You're welcome.
Yeah, I will use emojis, but when I'm actually declaring war on other countries, I try not to.
So let's talk about the Supreme Court.
Yeah, let's do it.
Interesting case.
That they upheld the Biden administration's regulation on these ghost guns, or the ones you don't have any serial numbers on, practically untraceable. That is a 7-2 ruling. The usual suspects, Alito and Thomas, were in the two.
It's stunning to me.
But this is heartening.
Yeah, it is. It's so on the legal side, and gun rights lawyers or gun lawyers will know the details of it. But on the legal side, the question was simply, do these guns that are shipped in pieces and then online and then assembled at home, so when they're shipped, they're not guns. They're just
shipped
pieces
or
of a gun.
Printed at home on 3D printers, right?
Then they're put together, exactly right, and assembled at home. The question is does the 1968 Gun Control Act, which gives the ATF, Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms Agency, the ability to regulate, so long as lawful, does it give ATF, the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms, I should say it right, authority to regulate? That was the sole legal question. And that the court resolved is because the assembly creates the gun, it can be regulated, and therefore ghost guns can be regulated. So that's good, because that's just common sense, right? You go online, I've seen these, and the reason why I've seen them is because this has become a huge issue, not talked enough about, which is this unregulated market of pieces of guns that are going, that are harming people. Just one statistic, when the Biden administration argued this, they submitted to the court that in 2016, only 1,800 ghost guns were submitted for tracing by the FBI. In other words, something bad had happened, federally bad had happened, and the FBI was reviewing. By 2021, 5 years later, that number is up to 19,000. I haven't seen more recent numbers. So you just see this exponential growth of these being used for criminal behavior. So it's a good opinion, but very sort of legally technical.
Can you think of one case, either of you, where Alito and Thomas voted with something that's good? No, good for the average person in this country, other than if it was a unanimous decision?
I don't, it's funny, I don't even know when the last unanimous decision is. I'm sure there are, because we sometimes talk about them, but I can't remember.
Very angry.
Well, I think they are.
Yeah.
In any case.
Not good to be ruling out of anger, I don't think.
So far, this has been a fairly responsible conversation. Let's make it irresponsible.
Okay,
for the remaining moments. Here's my thesis. When we heard the other day that the wife of the vice president was going to Greenland, we are of the belief that she's not so crazy about the whole deal here. The administration, Trump, that sort of thing. And then lo and behold, and she's going there to represent the administration, we find out that the vice president is joining her on this trip. My thesis, I want to be clear, based on nothing.
I bet you I had
no
the same
evidence
thesis.
Is that he's gone because she said,
I'm out of here.
I'm out of here. I'm not going to this.
I totally had that last night, because he looked like he was in the doghouse in the video, as they say about husbands. He is standing there, and he's like, he totally makes this up. He's like, well, she was getting so much attention, which is so
I
rude.
didn't even hear this.
The opening is, well, everyone was so excited about her visit, I realized I had to join her. Like, realizing now he's ruined it. She announces that she's going to go at the same, and then right after, the national security advisor, I don't know if he's still going since the Signal story broke, is going Greenland. And she was first of all, she was taking one of the kids. They were going to go to dog racing, but do some other sort of cultural thing. She does a video that's like, doesn't even talk about national security. It's just like, I'm really excited and blah, blah, blah. I don't know if she was stupid or she just had like second thoughts, but like, Greenland then goes up, and including the prime minister, like, go up in arms and say, like, what is going on here? Like, we're not, like, this is ridiculous. I think she realized it was going to end up being a political moment. How she didn't predict this before, and says, I'm not going, or you're coming with me.
So here's what I don't understand.
I agree with you. That was not voluntary.
And bringing her kid, she's going to get a lot of protesters.
What?
Obviously.
Well, there are only 56,000 people there, so there can't be that many protesters.
Well, I think, a few hundred could do the job.
I'm so confused by the second lady. Like, I don't get it.
Okay, well, forget her for a second.
What's going on with her? I don't
get it. I don't get it.
He used to be a liberal, I mean, he used to, we had the correspondent with a trans person.
Donald Trump used to be pro-choice and everything else. I mean, so here's my what I don't understand, which makes me nervous.
I have to say, he's still pro-choice.
Or if he's
Obviously,
anything.
yeah, he is.
Okay, so Greenland. Here's my concern, is that one day we're going to wake up and Trump realizes he's got no news to make this day. And I've never, and I mean this as a compliment, sadly, no one has ever dominated news cycles like this in the history of the world.
It's unbelievable.
Every hour. I got nothing today, he says. Can we seize Greenland today? Yeah, let's seize. I'm totally serious about this.
And goes, emoji.
That's
okay,
right,
emoji.
And they include the New York Times reporter on the chat.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so he does an executive order, I mean this sincerely, saying forthwith, herewith, whatever, as of this moment, Greenland is now a province or a territory of the United States of America. They report to us, Denmark, thank you for what you've done. See you later.
He can say what, I mean, he can.
No, but and then he sends troops.
Yeah.
Well, I know we have some. Sends more troops there and takes control of the country. Right. Who's going to stop him?
No, a NATO country will not. I mean, the idea that it is that you are correct on that. Here's the two sort of reasons why I don't think that will happen, or what I think is happening.
That seems a step too far.
Well, one is like his obsession with Greenland is so weird. And it's a hard narrative for Americans to get. Like, and you look at the polling, like, no one's quite getting this. I have a personal theory about the Greenland, Canada theory, which is I think the Russians are worried about the Arctic and they want Trump to be harsh to nations or areas that might disrupt Russia's aggressive Arctic stance. I think when I think about what is this about, and I always think, like, what does Trump have to gain from it? I think that is the background theory, and I'm not alone in that. But it's a hard thing to sell to the American public, because it's like people aren't getting it. Look, the strategy is how much damage can he do before he's under 40%. And I will say something. I heard the Chuck Schumer. I listened to the Lulu. We were just talking about her. Garcia. Yeah, well, we were on air together, and Jim
you
said,
looked exactly same hair,
we had the
same angle of your head.
You think all ethnic ladies look alike? All ethnic ladies of a certain age.
It was incredible.
No, but I was telling Jim, it was so funny. We looked so similar.
She's great.
She is fabulous. That they during one of the sort of errand shots, they moved me or her to the other side, so the next time you saw
somebody in the middle,
right? So that there was a guy in the middle, because we looked so similar. But
Greenland.
I'm sorry, Schumer. People are very angry at him, and he was sort of defending himself in the New York Times podcast that she leads, and he said, "Look, all the Democrats want the Republicans to turn on Trump. They're not going to, and they're not going to until he's under 40%, and that's what happened last time." Donald Trump has plummeted 6 points since he's been president 6 points a month since he's been president. So I don't know how I feel about Schumer, and I'll let the Democratic Party figure out what his leadership looks like. But it was at least a strategy. And so this goes to Greenland, which is attacking Greenland going to increase?
No.
And Trump knows that. Trump.
You mean, are the American people going to be upset if we do it?
Yes.
Nobody will be upset if we do it.
Nobody.
I don't believe you.
Who's going to be upset? A Greenlander who's
because it's not like Syria. It's not like the Iranian guy that they killed. There is no narrative that makes sense.
Marjorie thinks there's one.
No, here's the reason people would get upset about that, because people are still talking about the economy. They can't afford anything. Consumer confidence is the lowest it's been in 12
years.
There
are minerals in Greenland. He's going to bring minerals.
Yeah, you know what
make
else
America
is in Greenland?
Rich again.
You know what else is in Greenland?
What's its ice?
What's its greatest export?
Hot dogs.
No, what makes us skinny these days?
What is it? Oh, is that GLP? Is that true? Yeah. By the way, Jamie just reminded me, this is embarrassing. On Tuesday, Rufus Gifford, who was the ambassador to Denmark for Obama, will be here, and he was also the chief of protocol for Joe Biden, so we'll get to talk.
He's so fantastic. Come back.
He is great.
Wait, next
Tuesday next week.
I don't think Wegovy's enough.
What?
I don't think Wegovy's enough.
Is that it?
Is that what you said? They produced that.
I think so. I think that's one of their
biggest.
They
do?
Okay. Well, I don't know. I just know that it is not sort of the central issue.
We should do a remote broadcast from Greenland. Do you know how huge that would be?
50,000 people.
Yeah. 56.
56,000 people.
I'll connect with you on Signal.
Okay.
Is it ever above freezing? And also, is it ever above freezing in Greenland?
I've never been.
So. Anybody been to Greenland here?
Should we invade?
Thank you. Nobody. Should we invade?
No.
Thank you, Juliette Kayyem. It's nice to see you. Be well. Take care.
Thank you very much.
Emoji, heart, flag, fist pump emoji.
Whiskey leaks. Thank you.
Whiskey leaks to all of you. Bye.
We've been speaking with Juliette Kayyem, former Assistant Secretary for Homeland Security under President Barack Obama, faculty chair of the Homeland Security Program at Harvard's Kennedy School of Government, and a contributing writer at The Atlantic, which, of course, has been much in the news in the last day and a half.
And one of the greatest publications in America, long before the last 2 days.
And hiring all these hotshots now from the Washington Post, I've noticed. Anyway, Juliette, thank you very much.
Thanks.
After a quick break, 30 years later, the South Coast Rail is finally here. We'll talk about that and more. Bus lanes disappearing. How the Trump cuts may impact our transportation system here in Massachusetts. That's all next on Boston Public Radio 89.7 GBH, live from the Boston Public Library and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
So-called marginal wells make up more than 3/4 of the oil wells in the U.S., but account for just a fraction of oil production. But don't let the name fool you.
Marginal wells are not a marginal issue. There's 800,000 of them. Most wells are marginal wells.
I'm Elsa Chang. What makes marginal wells a big deal to oil producers and environmentalists? On All Things Considered from NPR News.
Today at 4, here on GBH News 89.7.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you.
And the Massachusetts Health Connector for Business. New premium value plans can help small business owners find and offer accessible employee health benefits. Learn more at mahealthconnector.org/business. And Subaru of New England. The all-wheel drive 2025 Subaru Outback is committed to keeping your loved ones safe on adventures this spring. Subaru retailer locations at subaruofnewengland.com.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Margery Egan, Jim Browdy. We're live at the library, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. We're now joined at the library by Christian MilNeil. He's editor of the transit news website, Street Blogs Mass. Great to have you. Thanks so much for being here. And on Zoom, wherever the hell he is, Jim Aloisi, former Secretary of Transportation for Massachusetts Department of Transportation, for our monthly transit panel. Jim, good to see you too. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me on another slow news day.
That's right, another slow news day. So, Christian, before we get into what's going on transportation-wise, what is Street Blogs Mass? What's the deal? What can people find out on the blog?
Sure, yeah. Well, like you, we're a nonprofit transportation news. Well, we do transportation, focus on Massachusetts, the whole Commonwealth. But we really focus on transportation from the point of view of transit users and bicyclists and pedestrians, people who don't usually drive as much, and we have a lot of those folks here in Boston area.
How does it feel to be 20 feet from the former bus lane? Good? No.
Yeah.
We'll get to that. We'll get to that. Okay, fine.
It's a hot topic.
Can we start with a big picture and then come down to the small picture, back to Massachusetts, Jim Aloisi, and then you, Christian?
Sure.
We know that the new Secretary of Transportation early on in this administration, meaning Trump's, was saying if you had mask and vaccine mandates, forget about federal money. If your marriage rate or birth rate is low, forget about it. Where are we 60 plus days in terms of what you would consider to be risk issues on the federal level, particularly funding, but it could be regulatory too, vis-a-vis transportation, Jim Aloisi?
Well, there are various kinds of risks. So there's a question that you asked the general manager when he was on a few weeks ago, which is, I think you asked him how much federal money the T got, and he didn't really have an easy answer for you.
Did you believe that he didn't know? I'm sorry to interrupt you. Did you believe he didn't know? He's a pretty smart guy.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm just a nonprofit pundit.
Okay, fine. Go ahead.
GBH.
Go ahead.
The answer is zero in terms of MBTA operating expenses. The federal government gives the T, just like any other transit agency, nothing, zero, for its operating expenses. So the costs of, and that, by the way, that when we hear about the crisis in the T and across the country in transit agencies, the so-called fiscal cliff, what we're talking about is that operating budget, right? That's the budget that you pay people with. Mm-hmm. You pay your bus drivers, you pay for the ride through that, you pay for commuter rail. That's that budget. It's not the capital budget, which is what the stuff you build stuff, right? So on the capital side, there is risk everywhere. On the operating side, there's no risk because there never was a dime. There hasn't been a nickel put by the federal government since Reagan became.
Okay, so tell us where some of those places on the capital side, where's risk, Jim?
Well, I think you have to look at some of the so-called mega projects that we've got going, whether it's Cape Cod Bridges or Alston Landing, the North Station Bridge. These are substantially funded in part by federal grant dollars, and they're intact as we speak. They may continue to be intact, but those are the places where there's risk. There may be risk in terms of funding for things like buying locomotives or buying electric buses. I'd be in favor of the feds pulling money from the electric bus pot because I think that's the wrong thing for the T to be doing in this moment in time. There are lots of better ways to reduce emissions than buying an electric bus.
What?
Like running better, buying more, having better service that would attract more riders and getting them out of cars.
Okay, I'm going to hold you there.
Way to deal with it.
I want to get Christian into the conversation. What on the federal front concerns you, Christian?
Yeah, so I just want to do a small correction to what Jim said. Like, the MBTA does not rely on federal funds for its operating costs, but a lot of our smaller rural transit agencies, like the Cape Cod RTA, even the Worcester RTA, the Pioneer Valley RTA, those regional transit authorities, which operate bus service outside the MBTA region in most of the state, do rely very heavily on federal
What does
funds
very
for-
heavily mean? Like out of business if the
Can't-
money disappears?
Can't put me on the spot. Yeah,
Okay.
they would have to be severe service cuts for rural transit agencies. Yeah.
Okay, how about back in the city, in the urban areas? What are the great things that concern you if they exist?
So far, Mass DOT and the T have said that the federal funding that that's already been committed is still coming in. They're still getting reimbursed for projects. What's concerning are some of these like big federal grants, the discretionary grants that were announced late in the Biden administration, like the money for the Cape Cod bridges, the money for Alston I-90 reconstruction. None of that money has been spent yet, and the Trump administration had put out a so-called woke rescission memo where they want to ask Congress to begin to claw back some of these funds. So some of those funding grants might be at risk.
So how difficult a process is that to claw back that money? I mean, does this mean, because we were talking about actually starting the Sagamore Bridge really soon, does this mean we could put anything toward it and then they'll try to claw back while we're half building it, or
That's
what?
the multi-billion-dollar question that nobody really knows. Yeah,
we don't know.
That's why it's just a cloud of uncertainty and risk at this point.
I mean, it would almost seem as though the stuff about marriage rates and trans stuff and all that, they probably just don't like Massachusetts because we're a blue state. Yeah, and we're a bunch of communists here, I guess. So what do people anticipate that this is going to happen?
So I've heard that Mass DOT is beginning to make contingency plans if these funds don't come through. What are some alternative funding mechanisms that they can use? There was a big poll that just came out this morning from Transportation for Massachusetts, where they asked voters across the whole state, not just the Boston area, should there be contingency plans, and what kinds of new funding opportunities would you be open to? Would you be open to new tolls, or would you be open to higher vehicle registration fees and things like this? And that poll actually found that a majority of voters were, open to that. Those kinds of ideas.
Congestion pricing?
And congestion pricing.
Really?
Yeah, there was a question about that. It was a Mass Inc. poll. They asked whether respondents would be willing to study congestion pricing, so it wasn't really a full-throated endorsement, but I think there was pretty strong support. I think 48%, I want to say, were open to studying it.
Because it's made a lot of money so far in New York, I think, right?
And it seems to be working very well in New York.
But wait, I mean, this is not in the real world. I mean, the notion that people in elected positions are going to follow the popular will and say we're losing $1.3 billion, I'm making up the figure, from the feds, so let's raise tolls, let's do congestion pricing, and let's increase the blank tax.
I don't know. How about congestion pricing?
When is the legislature bellied up to the bar?
Well,
on
Charlie
this
Baker
thing?
didn't like congestion pricing. Maybe we have a different attitude now.
Jim, am I being unfairly critical of elected leaders and their willingness to ask people to pay more for any of this?
No, you're not being overly critical. But I do think we need to have a rethink in the legislature and in the executive branch about how we want to. It's interesting. If you look historically, I'm going to take you down memory lane. James Madison, in his last months in office,
I remember that.
We all remember it.
Yeah, very well.
Vetoed something called the bonus bill, which was actually being promoted by John Calhoun from South Carolina. Ironically, what was
another great guy?
Bonus bill was a bill that was going to leverage federal dollars to support national infrastructure projects, and Madison, the father of the Constitution, vetoes it and says, "I don't think federal government has the right, Congress has the right to do this, so I'm going to veto it. It's not that I'm against infrastructure. I don't think we can use these federal dollars." And it was literally a century or so later that people began to change their attitudes about this. My point is, it's not like it's never historically been true that the federal government has decided it's not going to participate. Now, you could argue we wouldn't be a great nation if the federal government hadn't intervened, whether it was in the interstate highway system or the initial efforts to build Amtrak or invest in public transit in the 60s and 70s. But, we've got to rethink. I keep fantasizing of a governor who has a press conference and says, "I'm announcing that for the next 10 years, we're spending more on public transportation in Massachusetts and Metro Boston than we're spending on highways and bridges." And that doesn't mean we're spending less on highways and bridges. It just means we're spending more on public transit. But that requires people to really think about how we're funding this. I would be thinking about using climate funds for this, because this has a very efficacious effect on emissions. I'd be thinking about new ways of thinking about our system, right? And frankly, building in cost efficiencies while we go. I'm not talking about expenditure for expenditure's sake, but we've got a lot of work to do to rebuild a system in Massachusetts, and we're not anywhere near there yet. We've got to figure out how to be self-reliant. It's a big ask, but I think we need to have that conversation.
So let's talk, stay in Boston for a minute. Mayor Wu was standing right where you were, Christian, when she said to us a month or so ago that she was going to order a review of, I think a 30-day review, you'll correct me if I'm wrong, of all road infrastructure.
Yep.
And the first part of the review, and I asked her if that was in response to Josh Kraft saying, I'm not against bike lanes, but we got to pause and that sort of thing. She said, no, this review had been initiated, or at least contemplated well in advance. And the first major manifestation of that is the ripping up of the bus lane here. Are people like you, are you worried about a retreat, or do you think this is a wise thing to do, since there is some blowback from a significant, not just Josh Kraft, from a significant percentage of the population in the city, and in Cambridge where I live, and places like that?
Yeah. What's been interesting is now I've seen a lot of blowback from people who rely on the bus, people who rely on bike lanes, and as a reporter, I've been just trying to figure out what's going on, because when a lot of these projects went in, the city held dozens of public meetings and open houses and community walks, and the removal of the bus lane, there was no public meeting or discussion about that happening, so it was a very asymmetric kind of level of public outreach.
Is what buried in what you're saying, is this purely political on her part?
I mean, I'm not a pundit, but I get that impression, yeah. And to the mayor's credit, she's been very preoccupied with a lot of other stuff in the past month. I'm not sure how much she's involved in this decision. I'd be surprised if she is.
This predated. I mean, Homan was criticizing her, the border czar.
Yeah.
But her going to Congress and whatever came after this deal. So one last thing before we move to Jim on this: is it not? Even if there was all of what you consider to be reasonable outreach and gathering information at the early phase, there is a lot of conflict about this. What is wrong at some point, midpoint, to say, we are going to take a look at this again. Maybe we'll move forward with everything. Maybe we won't.
Yeah.
But we want to hear that there's a lot of opposition and support, but there's a lot of opposition.
I'm actually not sure how much actual conflict there is. I mean, I think there are some very vocal, very influential people saying that there's a lot of conflict. But if you go to a neighborhood meeting in the city of Boston, time and time again, the biggest concern people have are, getting safer streets. Their biggest concern is like that their kid is going to get hit by a car crossing the road or riding their bike to school. So all these projects have happened for a reason, and they do irritate, suburban car drivers. They irritate, some very, wealthy, politically powerful people. But I really don't think that bike lanes and bus lanes are as controversial as certain politicians want us to believe they are.
Would you subscribe to the Christian view of this? Capital C Christian, regardless. This Christian's view of this, Jim Aloisi.
I want to make a couple of points, and I say this as someone who occasionally takes the bus, doesn't bike at all, but very much supports both dedicated bus lanes and safe, protected, dedicated bike lanes along key corridors. But let me start with that. I want to make 2 points. It's really important for people to understand that public streets that every taxpayer pays for, whether they drive or not, right, are finite spaces that need to be shared fairly by everybody, not just automobiles, by people who bike, by people who walk, by people who take the bus. And so that's point one. Point two, I think the mayor has actually done the right thing by proving that even though she's been and continues to be a strong advocate for that sharing, that fair allocation, that she's also everyone's mayor and will be giving her ear to everyone's voice as she makes decisions about how to proceed, right? I think, I say this as an advocate for bike lanes and bus lanes, we advocates have to stop whining about what the mayor did and need to do some introspective thinking about the failure of our advocacy to date. Because every poll I've seen says we're losing when you ask people about bike lanes in the city of Boston. or bus lanes. So I think from an advocacy perspective, we need to be a little bit introspective and say, why are we losing that debate? Has our advocacy been effective? What's our messaging like? And do a significant, I think we're at an inflection point, do a significant reassessment of the ways in which we persuade our neighbors and fellow residents of the city that these are actually good things and not bad things. So, we've all got an obligation to take some of the load off a mayor who's dealing with, a variety of things, as Christian points out, and maybe step up our own advocacy rather than whining and complaining about the mayor doing her job, which is to be everyone's mayor and to listen to him.
By the way, if we didn't whine, we wouldn't have a show. So we reject that part of your...
But I want to get to something, talking about citizenry whining, because the Globe had a piece yesterday about the South Coast commuter rail that opened up, going down into Bedford and Fall River. And it's going to take 90 minutes, which is more than it takes you to drive when the traffic's not bad. And it's taken 30 years. And the rail, the train tracks were already there. And this is becoming an increasing theme in why the Democrats didn't do well last time around, is because Democratic cities, particularly, we have to have so many community meetings, so much input, so many lawsuits, so many NIMBY this, so many NIMBY that. Yep. We can't get anything done.
Yep.
And so it's a delicate balance you have to have, but that's kind of becoming his theme, that we got to shut up and actually build some things.
Do stuff, yeah.
The Globe seemed to be saying, kill the turtles. Did you not think that was what the editorial was?
Yeah, well, it wasn't kind to the rare turtles and salamanders, although it wasn't clear that they couldn't somehow relocate them.
Yeah, I don't think you need to kill any turtles.
Okay, I'm sorry, I retract that. Go ahead.
But what is interesting is we have these environmental laws that were written in the 1970s that are very effective in slowing down big infrastructure projects. But the irony is that, those environmental laws were written after all the big highways were built. So, so we've got this transportation system that, ironically, because of our environmental laws in part, forces everybody to drive everywhere. And as a result, climate change, which nobody was really thinking about in the 70s when, these modern, the environmental laws were all being enacted, climate change has become the biggest environmental issue. And we cannot address climate change. We can't meet our climate goals unless we can do projects like South Coast Rail much, much more quickly and build more housing near transit stations and things like that.
And that we're different, too. We had this story about Paris voting to make 500 streets car-free and replace the cars with trees. My God, everybody would have a total nervous breakdown if we had 2 streets replaced with trees. So they have a different attitude.
Can I disagree? When a year or so ago, we were talking to Mayor Wu, and remember it was a COVID, I hope I got this right, they closed down Copley Square for a while, and we said, you're going to make it permanent, we're looking at this, etc. I think people in advance may have had a problem with the concept, and you can't drive down Dartmouth. And then all of a sudden, it was this joyous place where people could have fun, they could sit out, they could picnic, they could whatever the hell they do. I think if done right, people are much more amenable.
You don't remember the fight about the trees on Melnia Boulevard?
I do. You and Marty Walsh. I know that. Okay, fine.
It was like it seemed.
But that was cutting down trees. That was the opposite.
People would love to have more trees on the.
We'd love to have more trees. Yeah, but I don't know. It just.
Well, it's an interesting balance because all these issues, there's sort of like the local neighborhood level politics, and then there's like the regional politics, right? Most people would love to have more trees on their street. It becomes an issue when you say, okay, we're going to take a lane out of Boylston and plant more trees there, and everyone all of a sudden was like, oh, that's where I drive.
That's right.
Don't do that.
Yeah.
So, by the way,
I like the parklets.
Yeah.
Little parklets. Those are kind of nice. People like those.
Yeah. We had Mark Dunkelman on the other day from Brown University, and his book, and Marjorie has become an advocate, Why Nothing Works.
Well, he's not the only one.
I know. There are a lot of people who are saying exactly what Marjorie said a minute ago. Do you subscribe? Their thesis in part is one person. If 60 people or institutions or entities challenge something, only one has to prevail to stop a really important project in its tracks. Do we have to change the equation, Jim Aloisi?
Yeah, we do. I talked to Mark when he was writing the book.
Oh, good.
He's pointed out a bunch of things, and Christian alluded to it, right? The very laws that were presumably enacted in the 70s to sort of protect the environment and ensure that traffic engineers didn't run amok have been turned on their head. One of the silver linings, frankly, of the Trump administration may be the opportunity to remake the National Environmental Protection Act and its regulations into something that actually works for people. Because I don't think anyone who considers themselves on the sort of progressive side of the transportation fence has been happy about it for a long, long time. And so, we have to figure out how to get out of our own way, and we have to do it in a responsible way. So I'm actually looking at some of the Trump initiatives, which are draconian at their core, as opportunities, actually, to refashion some of the rules and regulations and laws that many of us on the progressive side have been really arguing against over the past several years. There's some commonality there. We've got to figure out how to make building things not just cheaper, but simpler. And there are lots of role models globally to look at. We should be doing it. We've got a big country. There are lots of reasons why what may work in Massachusetts is not going to work elsewhere. But I think we have this sort of unique, ironic opportunity in this administration.
But Jim, except that he's not in favor of building anything that has to do with green energy. I mean, isn't that a contradiction? I don't know. Can't build any wind farms. We're talking fossil fuel building.
Yeah,
I think he's all in favor of coal plant building.
Unless something bizarre happens, he's only president for 4 years. Then someone else is going to be then someone else is going to be president.
Yeah,
and
Don Jr.
The opportunity,
J.D. Vance.
the opportunity to remake a system of regulation and law that we have not liked for a long, long time is a useful opportunity. I think smart, strategic progressives should be taking advantage of the opportunity moment. Again, I'm in favor of being strategic in this kind of moment, right? I'm not in favor of moaning and groaning and complaining. That doesn't get you anywhere. What you need to do is be strategic, be smart, take advantage of the openings and the opportunities, even if they're counterintuitive. And I think we have a few here that we need to exploit.
We have only a few seconds left, so say it quick.
Yeah, I would just say I think it's a little unfair to blame environmental laws because South Coast Rail was a project that started and stopped and started again several times because of weak political leadership.
Yeah.
And that's on us.
Yeah. Okay. So we don't need to rewrite everything.
Right.
Okay. All right.
Good to see you both.
Thank you very much for coming in. We much appreciate it.
Thank you.
We've been speaking with Christian MilNeil, editor of the transit advocacy news website Street Blogs Mass. That is Streets Blog Mass. You can find his work at mass.streetblog, streets plural, mass.streetsblog.org.
Thank you.
Okay. And Jim Aloisi, former Secretary of Transportation for Massachusetts Department of Transportation. Thank you both very much for coming in. Coming out after a quick break, it is time for a slightly different version of Two More Things. We'll check in on the DOJ subcommittee hearing on Washington with the people that run NPR and PBS. You're listening to Boston Public Radio 89.7 GBH live from the Boston Public Library and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
Book nerd alert.
I love books. I always have.
Under the Radar host, Callie Crossley.
And I know that a good book discussion is something that our listeners really enjoy as well. So from the beginning, we've had a monthly book segment bookmarked the Under the Radar Book Club.
The Under the Radar Book Club happens once a month, and tomorrow, Callie is taking it to the library. Check out all the details at gbhnews.org/UTR.
Support for our programs comes from you.
And Turkish Airlines, flying to over 300 destinations worldwide, including Athens, Seoul, Mumbai, and more. A complete list of destinations and more information is available at turkishairlines.com. And Furniture Consignment Gallery, committed to the circular economy for over 30 years. Current inventory is available to view in their showrooms in Burlington, Natick, Hanover, and Plymouth. More at furnitureconsignment.com.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Marjorie Egan and Jim Browdy live from the library stream at youtube.com/GBH News. As Marjorie said, instead of two more things today, we're going to do something a little bit different. Since 10 a.m., the House DOJ subcommittee, it's chaired by Marjorie Taylor Greene, has been holding a hearing. The title of the hearing is Anti-American Airwaves, holding the heads of NPR and PBS accountable The head of NPR and PBS were there, facing questions about federal support for public broadcasting. PBS, NPR, and their respective local stations, like us here at GBH, are funded in part by more than a $500 million appropriation.
Million.
No, $500 million.
$500 million?
Yeah, more than a $500 million.
$535 million. Oh, you're
That's
right. I'm sorry. You're right.
Provided by Congress through the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, in addition to a substantial foundation, corporate and viewer, listener, donor support, which in our case is overwhelmingly, it's the latter, not the federal money. We're going to play just a few highlights from the hearing with PBS President and CEO Paula Kerger and NPR CEO Catherine Marr. They'll note it's been going on during our show, so we haven't fully absorbed it all. So NPR media correspondent David Falkenflik will join us on Friday for a full recap.
Okay, so here is NPR CEO Catherine Marr talking about how local public media was the only news service available to North Carolina residents during deadly flooding and that after that terrible hurricane, and that went on for 2 weeks.
When everything else goes down, public radio is there, available to first responders to be able to communicate directly about issues of harm and ensure the public has access to vital, critical information.
I called her Catherine Marr, I think it's Mayor, but regardless, she's the head of NPR. Here's Representative James Comer, and this is the guy who's also chair of the Oversight Committee. Remember recently where Mayor Wu and the other mayors were there, not understanding what editorial means in the context of journalism. Here he is.
First of all, I want to recognize your concerns. One of the first things that I did in coming in May was to beef up our editorial standards. I directed my editor-in-chief, who, by the way,
Why is NPR even doing editorials?
I'm so sorry.
Even do editorials?
I don't mean editorial in terms of opinion editorial.
Do you even need opinion? What does it matter with the opinion? If you're a federally funded entity that's supposed to provide the news. Can you not provide the news?
Of course.
Fair and balanced?
Of course, Congressman. I mean editorial standards for our journalism was to beef up our editorial practices, bringing in more editors to make sure that we have more points of view reflected in every story.
Boy.
Oh, my God.
One more moment from the hearing. Here's Representative Gregorio Cesar, he's a Democrat, questioning Mr. Hernandez of the Heritage Foundation about Miss Piggy and Daniel Tiger.
How many millions of dollars a month do taxpayers spend for Daniel Tiger to play golf?
I have no idea.
The answer is none.
Okay.
To your knowledge, has Miss Piggy ever been caught trying to funnel billions of dollars in government contracts to herself and to her companies?
That's a silly question.
Well, the answer is no. How about Arthur the Aardvark? Has he ever fired independent government watchdogs who are investigating his companies? The answer is no. Madam Chair, I'm told we're here to talk about government efficiency, but Daniel Tiger has not blown $10 million of taxpayer money to play golf with his friends, but Donald Trump has, just at the beginning of his administration. Miss Piggy hasn't been caught funneling billions of dollars in government contracts to herself, but Elon Musk has.
I can listen to him a little
more.
The hearing wrapped up about 20 minutes ago. No major bombshells. Republicans made the argument, we're told, along these lines. Money is limited. State-funded media is obsolete because of the changed media environment with Marjorie Taylor Greene and Jim Jordan, who's not even on the committee, doing their drag queens are bad routine. Why are you doing documentaries about non-binary people? There are only two genders, that sort of shtick, and ignoring the fact that in a lot of parts of this country, nothing exists for the news except PBS and NPR.
Okay, so while the Democrats argued that the committee is a sham, focusing on organizations that get 0.01 of the federal budget is insane when people like Elon Musk have contracts with the federal government that personally enrich their own wealth 100 times over.
We're going to listen to it ourselves in totality tonight. Not only will we do it with NPR's David Falkenflik on Friday, if there's something really dramatic that needs immediate attention, we'll bring it up tomorrow as well.
Okay.
That's it. It's over, the hearing.
Coming up after the 1 o'clock news, we're going to have a panel on immigration crackdowns. We'll speak with GBH reporter Sarah Betancourt, immigration attorney Julio Henriques.
If it's been a while since you made a gift of support to GBH, now is the time to step forward and renew your support for your home for trusted local news and conversations that matter to you. Renew your membership now at gbhnews.org.
Support for GBH comes from you.
And Supermicro and NVIDIA, accelerating AI with a wide range of AI servers and the NVIDIA AI Enterprise software platform. Supermicro is committed to driving AI infrastructure breakthroughs with rack-scale innovations. And Celebrity Series, presenting the Alvin Ailey American Dance Theater, featuring Mr. Ailey's timeless masterpiece, Revelations, April 24th through 27th at the Bach Center Wang Theater. Tickets at celebrityseries.org.
You're listening to 89.7 WGBH HD1 Boston. Online at gbhnews.org. GBH News. What matters to you?
Over.
I'm Marjorie Egan. Then we all need a little levity right now, so we'll spend a little time celebrating arguably the greatest achievements of the late, great George Foreman. His as seen on TV, lean, mean, fat-reducing Foreman grill. What's the best thing you've ever bought off an infomercial? And how about the biggest ripoff? It's all next in the third hour of Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH, live from the Boston Public Library.
NPR's Franco Ordonez reports criticism is increasing after more texts were released.
The Atlantic magazine published more messages from the group chat of senior Trump officials detailing precise launch times and the specific fighter jets that would carry out strikes against the Houthis in Yemen. The White House insists such details were not classified. Alina Habba, counselor to the president this morning, continued to minimize the significance and attack the media for its coverage.
Look, it is what it is. At the end of the day, this is, in my opinion, something that they're making a big to-do about nothing.
But top officials continue to be questioned about the leak at the White House and on Capitol Hill. Franco Ordonez, NPR News, the White House.
NPR CEO Catherine Marr chairs the board of the Signal Foundation, a nonprofit that supports the messaging app. The Supreme Court has upheld a Biden-era rule requiring serial numbers and background checks for ghost guns. Justices voted today 7-2. The Justice Department has reported a surge in the number of hard-to-trace ghost guns found at crime scenes from fewer than 1,700 in 2017 to more than 27,000 in 2023. However, the DOJ says since a federal rule targeting ghost guns was finalized in 2022, the numbers in several major cities flattened out or declined. NPR CEO Catherine Marr appeared on Capitol Hill today along with Paula Kerger, her counterpart from PBS. Heads of the two largest U.S. public broadcasting networks fielded questions from lawmakers about what many Republicans view as a liberal bias in their news coverage. Here's NPR's Scott Newman.
Republicans focused on examples they said showed bias in coverage, especially at NPR, and whether public broadcasting should get taxpayer dollars. NPR and PBS denied the bias. Kentucky Representative James Comer said it was past time to defund NPR.
I've lost confidence in public radio. I don't think, Madam Chair, they should get a penny of federal funds.
House Democrats pushed back, calling the hearing a distraction from more serious issues, such as the recent breach of U.S. security when war plans for a strike on Houthi rebels were inadvertently shared with a journalist. Scott Newman, NPR News, Washington.
Brazil's Supreme Court has voted to put former President Jair Bolsonaro and several close allies on trial. They are accused of conspiring to stage a coup to overturn his 2022 election loss to President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva. Bolsonaro denies any wrongdoing and claims he is being politically persecuted. Hundreds of supporters of Bolsonaro stormed the Capitol on January 8th of 2023, just 1 week after Lula took power. Bolsonaro denies any involvement in the Capitol riot. U.S. stocks trading lower this hour. This is NPR News.
Good afternoon. With the latest from the GBH Newsroom, I'm Henry Santoro. A Tufts graduate student from Turkey is in ICE custody for reasons that are not yet clear. Remesa Öztürk was arrested yesterday in Somerville near the Tufts campus. A lawyer for Öztürk, a pro-Palestinian activist, says they have not been able to make contact with their client. Fatima Ahmad leads the Muslim Justice League. She says Öztürk's detention is in keeping with a troubling trend.
With Trump, it's just, turbocharged, it seems like, in terms of using ICE, using DHS to just pick off a bunch of students.
Tufts says it's unaware of Öztürk's detention. ICE did not immediately respond to a request for comment from GBH. Mass education officials are considering taking a timeout on the practice of using timeouts to discipline students at schools. The Globe reports that officials are zeroing in on the difference between students taking voluntary timeouts versus students who are put in involuntary seclusion. Yesterday's meeting moved to limit disciplinary actions in schools involving the use of so-called timeout rooms, which are most often used to subdue students with disabilities. A 2024 Globe investigation found that some schools in the state had been putting students in seclusion and then calling it a timeout, which are two different things. In sports, the Bruins in Anaheim tonight, Celtics in Phoenix, the Fleet host Toronto at the Agganis, and the Red Sox start the season tomorrow in Texas. This is GBH News.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Fisher Investments. Fisher's dedicated team of specialists provide resources on investing, retirement income, estate planning, and more. Learn more at FisherInvestments.com. Investing in securities involves the risk of loss.
Eastern Browdy, I am Marjorie Egan. Welcome to hour number 3 of Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH. We are broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library and streaming at youtube.com. Thank you, /GBH News. Hello again, Jim.
Hey there, Marjorie. So even the threat of immigration raids in and around Boston has many people fearful of going to work, bringing their kids to school or to a doctor, going out in public in general. And let's be clear, we're not just talking about undocumented people, and we're surely not just talking about undocumented people who have allegedly committed serious crimes. But as we talked about a number of times on the show, the threats have also been realized at corner stores and off-campus housing. And Boston has been targeted by Trump's border czar, Tom Homan. He's the self-described bringing hell to Boston guy who retaliated against his city of Mayor Wu for local immigration policies. We're joined now at the BPL desk by GBH reporter Sarah Betancourt, who's been following immigration locally for us. Sarah, it's good to see you. Along with us is immigration and human rights attorney Julio Henriques. Good to see you too. And International Institute of New England Senior Vice President Xan Weber. Xan, thanks for joining us, all three of you. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So, Sarah, let's start with you since you're our GBH colleague here. What's the overall sense of what's been going on in recent weeks since the Trump administration came into power?
Well, it really echoes back to his first administration where there was a focus on deportation, but the difference here is things are accelerated. There's been a lot of time for immigration policy advisors to the president to prepare for this. And we're seeing people who are undocumented, people with previous criminal charges, people with legal statuses being detained at various times. We've seen a recent appearance by the border czar last week in which over 300 people were detained. Everything is moving very quickly.
Before you go to your colleagues here, can you just give us one example that brings it to life, if you can, about a human being or a set of human beings rather than just talking about the policy, starting with you, Sarah?
So back in early February, I interviewed the wife of an undocumented 29-year-old in Marlborough who was detained while driving to work, a painting job, by ICE. They were looking for someone else, but they realized he was in the country by overstaying his visa years before. He was a church singer and performer in Marlborough with his wife and his daughter, another on the way. He was detained at Plymouth and then sent to Texas to 2 different detention centers. And what his immigration attorney, Aloisi, said, it was a miraculous release. He was released on $8,000 bail and he's back in the community. But this is a very rare situation. He has no criminal record.
How long has he been in the country?
About 7 years.
And he was detained for, what, 3 weeks? It was quite some time.
It was a little bit over 3 weeks, and there were days that he couldn't access legal counsel. He couldn't speak to his wife. There were days that they didn't know if he'd been deported out of this country. It turned out he was sent to Texas. And I interviewed him last week in sort of a rare circumstance where someone is released and, is back in the community.
Xan Weber, how about you? Same big picture view of where we are, 60 plus days in Trump 2.0, and also give us an example from your work too, if you would.
Yeah, instead of like an individual example, I'll use the 21,000 people that we served last year, all of whom were invited into the United States with permission because of humanitarian reasons, because they were fearing for their life. And none of those people, to our knowledge today, have been detained, but every single person is shocked, confused, and I think somewhere between feeling betrayed and scared for their life, just in the sense of like coming into a country because they were afraid and now being afraid because they're being threatened here in the U.S. So,
what services do you provide?
Yeah, so we're a Refugee and Immigrant Services organization, the largest in New England, and we really provide services that are very emergency-based. We help people find food, shelter, we get them ESOL, English language supports, and then we get them into the workforce right away. So
part of what you do is federally funded, is it not?
it is a large part of what we do is federally funded. We're in the middle of like real uncertainty and unpredictability around the federal funding. We do have other community support, and we're just, we're trying to keep going.
Julio, how about you?
So yesterday I had the opportunity to meet in the Boston area with a nonprofit and the people that are served by this nonprofit, and they invited a couple of families whose family members had been detained recently, and the word got out and about 20 families showed up, and the way you interact with these families, many of them have been here for over 20 years, and the fear that they're feeling, they don't want to go to my office. They want to go to a location that is safe for them, because they've faced firsthand an increase in detentions on people that have no criminal background, that have been here in the U.S. for a long time. There's one instance of one person that had a deferred action for labor enforcement, and he had a work authorization, and he was detained. They were not looking for him, but they encountered him, and they decided to detain him.
Yeah, can we clarify that just for a second? We had Donna Lieberman, the head of the Civil Liberties Union in New York, on the other day, who her office are among the offices representing Mahmoud Khalil, who, as far as we know, is still in Louisiana, the Columbia graduate student thing. Just starting with you, it is totally clear that they are grabbing a lot of people who are here perfectly legally, like him with his Greek card, permanent legal U.S. resident. That's not aberrational, his situation, correct? There are a lot of people like that.
There's a lot of people that have been detained that should not have been detained. And we're having the opportunity to challenge that in court, and many immigration judges are granting bond and allowing these people to come back to the communities. But a lot of them are being sent to remote locations. They're being sent to Louisiana, Mississippi, Texas. And the judges there tend to be much more strict in granting a bond. And it's also harder for communications.
Well, we had Tom Homan said on Monday that he'd flown to Boston to oversee this operation with 370 people arrested. Here he is talking to reporters about this recent immigration operation.
Sanctuary cities are going to get exactly what they don't want: more agents in the community and more collateral arrests. Why? Because we can't get access to the bad guy in the county jail. But when you release that public safety threat back in the public, that means we got to go find him. When we find him, most likely he's with others. And if they're in the country illegally, they're coming too. Because we're not going to tell ICE to ignore the oath that you took to enforce immigration law and walk away from the illegal alien like the last administration does.
We should say, well, he didn't say it there. He has said frequently he doesn't give a damn what the courts say. They're going to proceed to do what they do.
When I am concerned about, obviously you guys would be too, these 370 people, do we know all their names? Do we know who came to the over the border illegally but has committed no crime other than that in Boston? It sounds like it says 205 had significant criminal convictions or charges in this Globe story, but there's
according to ICE, from what I understand.
Yeah, but there's 370 people. So what do we know about these people?
Yeah, we covered that story. We have none of their names. They listed 14 individuals by describing their countries of origin and some charges which were quite serious. Instances of sexual assaults, theft, etc. But at the same time, they only listed 2 from Boston. And if you look at Tom Homan's message to media, he mentions Boston at least 6 or 7 times. But the majority of the 14 were actually Worcester and other regions of Massachusetts. And there's really a question of who these individuals are, because charges versus convictions are 2 very different things.
Very different things. Yeah, and one of these stories talked about people that were convicted of murder. People that were convicted of murder are not kind of walking around. They're usually in jail for a very long time, no matter where they're from, Americans or somebody that came over the border.
Or there were over 150 that actually were not listed as having criminal charges or convictions against them which leads to the question of, were they undocumented? Were they here in the country legally with green cards? We don't know anything. We really don't.
You know, one of the things, could you explain what the state of the law is, Xan, in terms of right to representation? Are these 370 people, obviously the thousands like them, are these 370 people entitled to legal representation if they can't afford it?
I'm going to let Julio take that because
okay, well,
he's
it's
an
fine.
attorney.
Okay,
But,
okay, let's do that, and then I'll go back to Xan on something else. Good.
So although they have an access, they have the right to legal representation, the government is not going to pay for that. They have to provide that legal representation for themselves, and they have to pay
for it.
Yes, they
so
have
which
to pay
means
for it.
many of them will be unrepresented because they can't afford it.
Yes.
So did you write to the legislature? Is our legislature that acts snail-like on almost everything is actually considering a bill that would require the legislature, that the state or city or something pay for legal representation?
Yeah, we actually wrote about the Immigrant Defense Fund last week. There was an event at the State House in which a lot of policymakers were promoting it.
But who knows?
It's sitting there. I mean, it's
Sitting
a pretty
there.
new bill. It just launched within the past month.
You know, Xan, the thing that all of you said and touched upon is something that has struck me nonstop. You didn't put it this way, but when we've talked a lot about Khalil, and what I've said every time is Trump already won. It doesn't matter what happens to him. We hope he gets to stay here with his wife who's about to give birth. But regardless of not, the chilling impact of this is unbelievable, whether it's on speech in the case of people like him, whether it's on people going to the doctor, sending their kid to school. While there haven't been mass deportations, there has been the spreading of mass fear and trauma epically, yes?
Yes, and I would say it's pretty infuriating because somehow it feels like the message and the narrative changed radically over the last 4 years. The narrative around, people in our communities who are new being criminal instead of being contributors. When I think of people that we serve, it's a man from Haiti who came here and we got him a job, and he's a warehouse assistant, and he just got an award for amazing work, and his goal in life is to get his master's degree in chain management. So that's the person we want to kick out of the country, someone who's going to help us with supply chain management. And why would we do it, right? Why would we instill
How do you
this
answer
level
that
of
question?
fear?
Cruelty to the point, or how do you answer the question?
I think we're just letting it happen. I mean, I think this is. I mean, if you look, again and again and again at countries that have amazing democracies and then collapse, it's because we're sort of swept away in the narrative, and we're not doing enough. We're not loud enough to stand up. I mean, I know people are getting louder, and I think one of your last people you were talking to said, when Trump's approval ratings drop below 40%.
Juliette Kayyem.
Schumer might do something about it, but
a lot of suffering.
And also,
along the
obviously,
way.
people know about the suffering in Haiti. I mean, between the hurricanes and the floods and the mudslides and the fighting and the gangs and stuff like that. You wrote, Sarah, about this young man who had been in the country since 2007, and he got detained at Logan Airport. This Fabian Schmidt. Tell us about him.
So Fabian was coming back from Germany and Luxembourg a few weeks ago and was detained at Logan Airport. He's a legal permanent resident with a green card, which is in good standing. New Hampshire father who works as an engineer, has an 8-year-old daughter, and is engaged to be married. And he was detained. His family alleges that he was interrogated for several hours in Terminal E of Logan Airport, that he was put in a cold shower, forced by a couple agents, and then interrogated again. Then he collapsed, went to MGH, and was transferred to an ICE detention center in Rhode Island and remains there.
Yeah, and he couldn't get his medication. I mean, I don't know why he needed to take a cold shower and be stripped naked in this transaction. It seems a little over the top. And people talk about this all the time, being sent into places with no blankets and lying on the cold floor. I mean, there seems to be draconian treatment.
Yeah, I mean, the Department of Homeland Security denied the claims without being specific to which claims they were denying. But it's definitely a very difficult ongoing situation. I mean, the family also didn't know why he was detained, which is not an anomaly.
You represent, Julio, from what I understand, a decent number of Venezuelans. And the brilliance of Trump, and I don't mean that sarcastically, is, unlike you saying, or whoever said, get the message out. we who actually care about fellow human beings who are trying to just make a living for their families and help their communities, our message seems to be so meek, and Donald Trump's so loud and so brilliant. I would guess if you talk to an average person, oh, those Venezuelans, all those people who were in those gangs, and thank God we got rid of them because they're all killers or whatever they are. And then finally, one judge said something that I hope will reverberate with people. Here's Judge Patricia Millett. She's on that appellate court that was hearing the whole question about how the Trump administration handled these several hundred, I guess, Venezuelans that they sent to El Salvador. Here's the judge.
There were plane loads of people. There were no procedures in place to notify people. Nazis got better treatment under the Alien Enemy Act.
Did she overspeak, or is that a fair description of the treatment of these people?
It's a very fair description. I think there was absolutely no process to determine who was a gang member and who wasn't.
How do you explain to people? We've all read reports that a lot of these people were not members of any gangs. There was one guy, what's the name of the photographer we're trying to get, who was on the plane,
well,
the only private...
I don't remember his name, but he talked about the really cruel treatment of these gang members, and some of whom said they're not gang members. One guy said he was a barber.
Right, gay bar. He said, I'm a gay barber,
gay
is what
barber.
the guy said.
Right.
So the problem is that it seems to me, and I know you're preaching to the choir, is when this is the example people see, most people don't want to hear about due process for people who've done horrible things. We're really glad we got rid of them. We support Donald Trump doing it in this sort of what do you say to those people about why they, the worst of the worst, even if they're not all, why they deserve the same legal rights that Haitian would, if he were threatened with deportation, deserves?
It's an erosion of rights that is first affecting this group of people, but once you allow the government to erode rights in this way, it's going to expand to everybody or to whoever they choose to expand.
To the people, the temporary protected status, and I think a lot of us know people who are in that group. We read the other day 500,000+ Haitians, Nicaraguans, Venezuelans, Cubans in that group. Starting with you, Xan, if you want to spit, what's the status of this? And is it possible, if the focus was on these people who are granted TPS, obviously for a reason, maybe you'll explain to people what the reasons are, is it possible that improves the messaging of people who want other people to be treated humanely?
So temporary protected status for Cuban, Haitians, Nicaraguans, and Venezuelans was a program that was actually opened and expanded under President Biden in order to create a safer pathway for people to come to the U.S. rather than walking 2,000 miles from Brazil. They could find a sponsor in the U.S., make a claim for protection, and come here legally.
Because of what was happening at home.
Because of what was happening. And it's not just, it's not the level of violence only. It's the complete destruction of the Haitian infrastructure. It's famine. It's not being able to eat. It's not being able to work. It's like nowhere to go. I always think about it as people in a burning house, and the U.S. lets a few people in from that burning house, and we've now shut the door. And even if we think it's because we need to change the way we work, there are people behind the door of a burning house. How are we okay with that? How is that possible? Like Julio said, I think you step one inch away from your obligation to everyone, and it starts to erode your protection of everyone.
But as you know, this was a huge issue in the election. Democrats didn't like this. We talked about the teen center in Roxbury that was shut down for a while to house migrants that came over the border. So in communities or in people that just came here 20 years ago from Central America or Latin America were voting for Donald Trump. So something is going amiss. And I don't know what the solution is, because obviously this issue resonates with millions and millions of Americans.
I mean, the only thing I can say is that, we're 107 years old. We were founded in 1924 with the Nationalities Act that restricted immigration from countries across the world. This happens again and again. It's cyclical. It goes up and it goes down. It goes up and it goes down. I don't think there's one way to deal with it. I do think that the dehumanization of people and the de-identification of people who are new has been happening for a very long time.
Yeah.
And then Trump sort of figured out a way to capitalize on that and has, I think, much greater plans for the country and sort of his own influence.
By the way, I assume there are a ton of the 500,000 people currently benefiting from temporary protected status who are here, right, in Massachusetts.
Yeah, I mean, like, Massachusetts has the second largest Haitian population besides Florida. But one thing about TPS and what's going on with Haitians migrating here during the Biden administration, there's also a selective memory of the U.S. government of its involvement in Haiti. And that's a problem because the United States federal government with its colonialism was part of the history that created the situation where there's no economy, there's no work, there's nothing. Now, for the people who are here, I mean, they're really in limbo. I think Haitians have, till August 2nd or 3rd until their status is revoked, and that's in federal court right now.
Did you know, we're speaking of Venezuelans, didn't I read that you worked with some of the people who got shipped to Martha's Vineyard? And obviously the prayer was that DeSantis or Abbott or both? The prayer was that the people of Martha's Vineyard were going to say, get out of here. And in fact, they welcomed them as fellow human beings who needed help and totally destroyed the narrative, at least for a short period of time. Do you have any idea? It was 50 people, right?
Yes.
Do we know what the status of those 50 is, or
The majority of them are working. They have TPS. Some of them have pending asylum claims. They are all integrated in the communities. The majority remain in Massachusetts. Some
do?
Yes. Some have gone to other states, but more than half of them are still in Massachusetts. And they're the ones that I'm in touch with directly. They're doing very good. They're working. They're contributing. And also, they're afraid. They're afraid because this is impacting them as well.
You know, that's one of the horrible ironies of this. I know you three know this far better than we, so let me just state the obvious. The best people to tell the stories are those people. And the last people who are going to want to tell those stories and raise their head up for fear that the Homans of the world will cut it off are exactly the people. I was going to say to you, stupidly, can you get a couple of those people to come on the show and tell us what contributions they're making to the community? But obviously, they're not going to want to do it. It's really it's a horrible conundrum, to say the least.
You know, we're out of time, but, you know, the Dreamers, we talk about the Dreamers all the time. The Dreamers are still in limbo as well. People that came here when they were 1-year-old, 2-year-old, 3-year-old with their families.
That have no connection to their original home country.
Right.
And they're at risk, too.
Okay.
You're all doing fabulous work, though. We really appreciate it. We
Thank you
appreciate
very
your time
much.
here
Thank
today.
you very much.
Thank you so much
For coming in. We've been speaking with GBH reporter Sarah Betancourt, immigration attorney Julio Henriques, and International Institute of New England senior vice president Xan Weber. Thank you very much
Thanks
for coming in.
Thanks to all three of you. Really appreciate it.
Okay, coming up after a quick break, a little change in tone here. We're going to talk about the late, great George Foreman, who just passed away. You know what his greatest achievement would be? Some would not say in the ring as a heavyweight champion, but his as seen on TV lean, mean, and fat reducing Foreman grill. We're going to talk about stuff you've bought as seen on TV products. What are your favorites? Jim's is the chamois, I believe, or the Floby, the thing you cut your hair with. We're going to talk about Floby's, chamois, and George Foreman's grill, and anything else you buy on TV. Up next, you're listening to Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH, broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
So-called marginal wells make up more than 3/4 of the oil wells in the U.S., but account for just a fraction of oil production. But don't let the name fool you.
Marginal wells are not a marginal issue. There's 800,000 of them. Most wells are marginal wells.
I'm Elsa Chang. What makes marginal wells a big deal to oil producers and environmentalists? On All Things Considered from NPR News.
Today at 4, here on GBH News 89.7.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you.
And Advocates, the human services provider helping individuals facing mental health, substance use, and other life challenges, is now hiring clinicians. Learn more about their supportive culture and open positions at advocates.org. And Furniture Consignment Gallery, curating pre-owned luxury home furnishings for over 30 years. Current inventory is available to view in their showrooms in Burlington, Natick, Hanover, and Plymouth. More at furnitureconsignment.com.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Marge Regan and Jim Browdy live at the library, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. On March 21st, this several days ago, George Foreman died. People, I think, know, the two-time heavyweight champion of the world, half of the greatest documentary ever made, When We Were Kings, featuring Muhammad Ali
great.
and George Foreman. We want to spend the next 20 minutes giving tribute to Foreman. More, I guess, is businessman and minister. But we got derailed in our morning conversation thinking about all the as seen on TV products that have stayed with us. George Foreman is, of course, the namesake of the George Foreman Grill, beloved by college students, hamburger enthusiasts everywhere. It now sits in the Smithsonian Museum in Washington.
Can you believe it?
No, yeah, I can. Next to the first microwave in Julia Child's kitchen. They sold a mere 100 million of the Foreman grill. So we want to open the lines at 877-301-8970. We can hear about your as seen on TV purchases. If it's Foreman grills, it's fine. If it's the chamois, fine. My favorite, as Marjorie said, the Floby. What is it about, but wait, there's more, that gets us instantly reaching for our wallets? And more importantly, when you found the thing you really wanted, like me and the Floby, how many times did you use it after you actually opened the box? The number's 877-301-8970. You can call or text. Operators are standing by. Only 4 easy payments of $19.99 each. 877-301-8970. Do you have any of these things? Did you ever buy any of these things? I did buy. I said I hadn't this morning, and then I realized I had a Foreman grill, which I'm sure I used once, like everything else, and I had a Floby for years.
I don't think I've bought any of these things, but I'll tell you what, we should start to get in the mood with the Beyond the Infomercials. This is from The Office, that great TV show.
Yeah.
The Foreman's Grill, foremost moment in the spotlight, came in a plot line of the Office TV show when boss of the paper company they all worked at, Michael Scott, incorporates the grill into his morning routine and, of course, ends up hurting himself.
Just say again really loudly what happened.
Okay, I burned my foot very badly on my Foreman grill, and I now need someone to come and bring me into work.
You burned your foot on a Foreman grill.
When I wake up, I plug in the grill. I go back to sleep again. Then I wake up to the smell of crackling bacon. It is delicious. It's good for me. It's a perfect way to start the day. Today, I got up, I stepped onto the grill, and it clamped down on my foot. That's it. I don't see what's so hard to believe about that.
Now, by the way, for those who have never seen a Foreman grill, because you've seen other in-house grills that don't create smoke problems, do you know what the secret to the Foreman grill was?
No
it was
smoke?
tilted. No, the grill surface was tilted, so the grease ran off from the grill into a little side thing, and then you got to grill your cheeseburger. So 100 million of them. We'd like to know if you're one of the 100 million purchasers of a George Foreman grill, or any other as seen on TV kinds of products.
Okay, Christine from North Andover says, when discussing as seen on TV items, you must include all the crap made by Ron Popeil.
Popeil, yeah.
Who could forget the egg scramblers, the pocket fishermen, and all the other junk? Christine says, I actually purchased a food dehydrator at a yard sale for $3 that worked for years. I think we have some sound from Ron Popeil, don't we?
I don't know.
Yeah, here we do. The Set and Forget It. Here's a 2001 commercial for the Ronco Rotisserie with Ron Popeil.
And I'm going to put a little lemon pepper here. I like that nice flavor. That's all you do. I'll put it in the rest area right over here. Slide it back. It falls into place. I'll pull the window up like so. Turn it on. I'll set it and... Right.
Who could resist?
The Ronco. I've seen a picture of it. It looks very impressive.
You didn't buy any of these
things? The Ronco Rotisserie. No.
Nothing?
No, but at CVS, if you go to CVS, I'm sure they have it at Walgreens and other places too.
As seen on
they
TV
have the
aisle.
whole as seen on TV aisle, and you get a lot of this stuff.
There used to be a whole store at Cambridge Side Galleria.
Oh, really?
As seen on TV, a whole store.
It never looks as good in person as it does when you see
That's
it on
why
TV.
it's as seen on TV.
That's right. You get seduced by this idea that you can just see it. And here's one of the ones. This is one people make fun of, but it's not very funny because people have health problems and they're elderly and they can't get up.
So why are you doing it then?
Because we're all so familiar with it. The clip from the commercial for Life Call featuring the now iconic "I've fallen and I can't get up."
Watch. You just press this button and speak into the air and...
I'm having chest pain.
I'm calling paramedics and your family, Mr. Miller.
I've fallen and I can't get up.
This is really horrible.
We're sending help immediately, Mrs. Fletcher.
See?
Marjorie's
Protect
laughing.
yourself with Life Call, and you're never alone.
There you go. We're all going to be there
You should
soon,
get me a
Jim.
life call for my birthday, actually. 877-301-8970. In a minute, because Marjorie's playing far too many sound bites and I don't get to play any.
Oh.
I want to play the Floby in a second.
Floby and ShamWow. I was calling it ShamWow by mistake. It's
Whatever.
ShamWow.
We have a photograph of the Foreman grill for those who are not lucky enough to be one of the. There would be
There's
George Foreman. So let me tell a story before we get to the calls about the Foreman grill.
Yes.
I was a city councilor in Cambridge 20-some years ago. And there's a dinner at the high school to benefit the culinary arts program. And who is the guest attraction?
Jim Browdy.
Julia Child.
Oh, Julia Child. I thought it was
Julia
gonna be Jim
Child's
Browdy for
assistant
sure.
walks up to me and said, were you willing to sit next to Ms. Child at the dinner? She'd like to sit next to you. Now, I, of course, thought, oh, she knows who I am. She wants to sit next. It turns out I learned from the assistant after the fact, she likes to sit and talk to people with deep voices.
Oh, deep voices,
That's why I
okay.
made it.
All right.
So one side of Julia Child was me. The other side of Julia Child was the then mayor of Cambridge, Anthony Galluccio. So I'm a little nervous, actually too nervous to talk to Julia Child. Anthony is not at all. The mayor is not. I hear Galluccio turn to Julia Child, the most famous cook maybe in the history of the world. Hey, Julia, you got one of them Foreman grills? And I don't remember what, she was so kind and so warm. I don't know if she actually said yes, but
and it wound
she
up
clearly knew who it was.
next to her kitchen at the Smithsonian Institute.
And that is pretty incredible. Well,
I mean,
it's huge.
pretty
100
incredible.
million gets you into the Smithsonian, I think.
Okay, let's go to Barbara in Newton. Hi, Barbara.
Hello, Barbara.
Hi there. How are you?
We're good, thank you.
Great. No, I own a George Foreman grill. I've had
Excellent.
it for years, and I had used it religiously for grilled vegetables, asparagus, chicken, etc. It's wonderful. It's in storage. I've been gone, and I can't wait to get it back out and start using it again.
Do you really continue to use it? Really?
I do.
That's
I do.
great. I love
I've
it.
used it for years. No charcoal, no gas, no pollution. I just plug it in and use it in the kitchen. It's awesome.
I love that. Barbara, I didn't think we'd hear from anybody who still used it. Barbara, thank you for the call. I bought a bread baker on, I just forgot about that. You just throw crap into this little cylindrical thing, and it bakes a loaf of bread. I did it once. Never use the thing. I mean, that's the thing with all these things. You use them once and never again.
Listen to this. My mother spent my entire inheritance at QVC on every electronic item and gadget she could find, including the George Foreman grill. And here's Aiden in Vermont. He said, I bought the Floby after moving from Rhode Island to Vermont and quickly realized nobody in Vermont knows how to give a good haircut. I figured that since I can give myself a bad haircut with a Floby, why am I going to bother paying $40 to somebody else to give me an awful one? The Floby, says Aiden, is amazing.
I'm going to explain
And
what the Floby is.
A texter thinks
Yeah.
the Floby did a very good job on your hair, Jim.
I didn't do my hair. Thank you. This text, Zoe, this is Zoe, our coworker. I begged my mother for an easy bake oven. It took like 24 hours to make a brownie.
Oh, my
God.
God.
So a Floby, does everybody know what a Floby is in the audience?
Explain it, Jim.
Almost no. A Floby was this thing you buy, as seen on TV, for like $19.99. So it's cheap. The only thing they don't tell you is you need to own a canister vacuum cleaner, which costs like $400. So you buy the Floby, you buy the canister vacuum cleaner, you attach it. It's got a tube, a sucking tube attached to it, and little demarcations, a ½ inch, an inch, 2 inches. You decide how long you want your hair to be on different parts of your head. You apply the suction cup to your head. It pulls the hair up in a thing, a ½ inch or an inch, and slices it off. So here's some sound. One of the great things I ever bought, used it once. Here's some informational sound, infomercial sound, for the one-stop at-home haircut called the Floby. Here it is.
Welcome to the exciting world of Floby Precision Haircuts. Our motto, no hassle, no mess, easy to do.
Well, as you can see, it's another great haircut. I'm still impressed every time I use it. You can have a great haircut, too.
You can. And here's the Floby. Can we show people what that looks like or no? Apparently not. But
Okay.
we will at some point, but not now.
So
Go
here's
ahead.
a texter. I still want my Ginsu knives. Never saw anyone flip knives around so fast. There you go. And here's the favorite, the best one of all, Jim.
What is it?
Well, the ShamWow.
What did that do again? I can't remember. What is
I think
the
it clean.
ShamWow?
Well, we're going to find out from
Okay.
Vince, because Vince is advertising the ShamWow. Here's the moment that rocked TV pitchman Vince offered to relative stardom his infomercial for the infamous ShamWow.
Hi, it's Vince with ShamWow. You'll be saying wow every time you use this towel. It's like a chamois, it's like a towel, it's like a sponge. This is for the house, the car, the boat. Doesn't trip. doesn't make a mess, you wring it out, you wash it in the washing machine. Made in Germany. You know the Germans always make good stuff.
Look at him with the ShamWow towel.
Oh, that's him.
Yeah.
Wow.
Don't you recognize him from all the ads?
Sort of.
877-381.
You know, he looks like the Secretary of Defense, doesn't he, actually?
He
doesn't
does.
he look like a young Hegseth?
He does look like a
He
young
does.
Hegseth.
And he's drunk, so it
maybe
probably
they're
is
related.
him. Okay, let's go to the calls. Joan and Westwood, you're next on Boston Public Radio. We have started talking about the Foreman Grill, but really talking about everything as seen on TV. Hello there.
Hi.
Hi.
Have you heard of the Big Top Cupcake?
I have now.
No.
What is it?
So it was to bake a cake that looked like a cupcake.
Oh.
And it was a silicone, it had a silicone top and a silicone bottom. But it was so big that you had to over bake it so the middle would get done.
Love that.
And I never bought it. This is what grandparents are for.
Oh, okay.
My kids saw it, and of course it appeared in the mail from the grandmother. So I always said they should say they wanted diamond stud earrings, so maybe those would appear in the mail.
Good line there.
That's a good one, Joan. Thank you.
Thank you, Joan.
Thank you very
I'm
much.
looking at it. It's actually very nice. Unfortunately, we can't share that with you either.
Okay.
But trust me, it's very appealing.
Couple of
looking.
texters. Remember the Snuggie, the blanket with
No.
sleeves? This texter, Kelly in Rhode Island, says she loved it and even got one for her dog. And then another texter wants to know if Jim ever purchased the Ronco hair in a can where you spray your bald spot with colored paint. How about that one?
What if I tell you I tried it once? I really did.
You did?
It shoots like, I used to have, I know it's hard to believe, like pretty black hair.
Yeah.
And it sprays like pellets, little pellets of black crap. And if you hold the button long enough, it essentially fills the whole spot.
Yeah.
And it's really attractive.
But you only tried it once and that was it.
So this is in The Guardian in 2020. I did not know this. George Clooney, according to some, maybe the best looking man on the planet, 59-year-old actor and human rights activist, again, 5 years ago, has admitted to successfully cutting his own hair at home using a Floby.
Wow.
My hair's really like straw, so it's easy, he told CBS Sunday Morning. According to Clooney, twice voted People Magazine's Sexiest Man Alive. Oh, it was $139. I guess it was wrong. Is so reliable. He's been using it for more than 22 years, and not simply during 2020. My haircuts take literally 2 minutes, adding that its speed and efficiency have afforded him time to stain the garage doors, mop the floors, and do much of the family's washing during lockdown in their LA home. So he said,
starring
oh, there
in-
he is. Look at this.
Yeah.
That's the Floby.
That's the Floby right there.
He looks fabulous.
Well, he does look fabulous no matter what he's doing, doesn't he? He's starring
Yeah,
in
he
that
does.
play now on Broadway. That's like a
biggest grossing play for its
yeah.
first week in history, actually.
A texter says, I have a fictional company called DTL for direct to landfill. You go to the website, you pick out your product, you
That's
ship,
great.
and then we ship it directly to the landfill.
That's pretty funny.
That's a clever one.
Laura, New Hampshire, you're next on As Seen on TV. Welcome to the show. Hi.
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 Yes, 25 years ago, I had a student in my class that said she bought a Floby and she loved it. I connected with her about 3 years ago. She's still cutting her hair with the Floby. That's her whole family.
That is truly incredible. And did you ever see her use it, or is this all? Have you ever seen her use it?
No, but I always thought she had great hair.
Okay, well, there you go. She and George Clooney apparently were pro-Flobyites. Laura, thanks for sharing that with us. We appreciate it.
Okay, a couple of people have called about this Snuggie thing. So here's a commercial for the Snuggie.
Oh, I didn't know we had
This
that.
is the blanket.
With arms?
That has sleeves. Yep, here it is.
Here it is.
Now, there's the Snuggie, the blanket that has sleeves. The Snuggie keeps you totally warm and gives you the freedom to use your hands. So now, you can work the remote or read a book in total warmth and comfort. Use your laptop without being cold, or enjoy a snack while staying snugly warm.
Look at I didn't know we had a picture. Look at this. How great is that? And you know what's incredible? The voice of every salesperson is exactly the same on every one of these things, man or woman. It's pretty
I think
incredible.
those who snuggie together stay together, Jim. I think
Okay,
it's a very romantic
Here's
picture.
a good one we
Okay.
forgot. Ronnie
Yep.
and Danvers. Don't forget my all-time favorite TV gadget, the clapper.
We have that one too.
Clap on, clap off, the clapper. Go ahead and then tell
Okay.
people what it is.
Clap off, clap on, clap off, the clapper.
Now explain it, please.
If you clap, the lights go on. You have to, you put it on top of you screw it into the bulb socket, I think.
Did you get
and
one?
Then yes. And
You
that
did?
was really cheap. I forgot about that.
Okay.
And then you screw the bulb into the screw-on thing, and you clap, and theoretically, and every once in a while it works, the light goes on. And then you clap again, and theoretically, every once in a while, the light goes off. And I have to say, of all of the crap that I did buy, and I'm realizing as we discuss this, I bought more than I realized, the one that was most impressive when it worked was the clapper. We didn't have, by the way, there's no remote controls then, so it isn't like you turn your TV on or off. No one knew how to do anything except walking up to the thing. You're sitting down clapping, and your damn lights go on. That's not exciting to you?
Well, I can see if you were in bed and you were asleep.
Okay, I was in bed.
Okay, you're in bed. Well,
Most people aren't clapping while they're asleep. I don't know are you aware of that?
But if you're sitting on the couch, Jim,
Sitting
it
on
would
the couch.
seem like you might just get up and turn the lights
Yeah.
on or off.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
In bed, all cozy. I can
You know
see
what it
where you
seems
might
like,
not wanna
too?
get
It
up.
seems like I could walk over there and get lunch by myself, too. But we have our own version of the clapper. Jamie, Jamie, what happens when... Oh, only kidding. That's very rude and condescending. That was Marjorie's joke.
We're
not
forgetting the Vegematic. You ever see those ads with the Vegematic? It just cuts the onions
That's
perfectly
the
and all
famous
that.
Dan Aykroyd. Isn't it the Fish-O-Matic?
The Fish-O-Matic.
On SNL. What's it called? What was it called, John?
Bassomatic.
Oh, Bassomatic.
Thank you, John.
John Parker just told us. If you don't remember from SNL, it's online at YouTube. It's one of the funniest bits ever. Dan Aykroyd is the sales guy, like all these salespeople have been doing. And he puts a whole bass into a Vegematic called the Bassomatic, and it grinds up and turns it into liquid.
Well, that's what
It
RFK
is so
Jr. did.
totally
That's what
disgusting.
RFK Jr. with the baby chicks, you know.
Oh, that is horrible.
He put them in the blender.
Don't even tell
Well, that's
me.
what he
I
did.
don't even
He's the guy who's in charge of our health, the guy that puts baby chicks in the blender.
Lucky he's not in charge of the chick's health.
How about this?
What's that?
The Magic Mesh Elite Magnetic Screen Door.
I don't even know what that
You
is.
just put the screen door up in magnets, and then you walk through the middle.
What?
Yeah, you walk through the middle. You don't need a door. You just walk through the middle. There's all these different chopping things. The slap chop.
Slap chop is just the thing they have, though, where you...
Slap chop is huge.
You slam the thing. It's huge. It's not huge.
The original slap chop slicer chopper with Japanese stainless steel blades.
Wow.
That's the key, the stainless steel blades.
Japanese stainless
That's
steel
right.
blades.
It's like the Ginzu knives.
Do you mind if we talk to the listeners, or
Oh,
you're
no,
not
I'm
against
sorry.
that?
I'm looking at all the...
Let's go to Harvey in Ipswich. You are next. You've been very patient on Boston Public Radio. Hey there.
Hi there.
Hi.
Hey, I buy all that stuff.
Good. Why wouldn't you?
What's your favorite?
I'm a pretty smart guy.
Yeah.
I was a lawyer for 30 years. I've argued in the Supreme Court.
Whoa.
Wow.
I use my magic Ginzu knife. I used to travel with a steel pocket.
Oh, we've got
this
a bad
connection is
connection,
bad.
Harvey. Oh, you know what? Why don't you stay on hold just for a
I
second?
think he said he took his magic Ginzu knife to the Supreme Court.
Yeah,
or something
when you
like
want
that.
to get a little better reception, we can
Harvey,
hear
don't go
you.
away.
Don't try to go away. Just move someplace we can hear
we'll
you.
come right back to you.
Better. Listen to this one. A friend bought me a Floby 40 years ago. I've not been to a hairstylist since.
Fabulous.
My cousin has cut hair for over 40 years. She always compliments me on my Floby cut. You can get them at a lot of yard
no way
sales,
that's
Jim.
true.
Well, that's what this
Paul,
this
you're
texter
in
says.
Rhode Island. You're next or whatever you are. You're next. Hello there. We're talking about As Seen on TV. Hello there.
Hi, I'm calling about the clapper.
Please.
I actually have one behind the couch. It's hard for me to reach.
Sure.
The only problem is I'll be sitting there watching TV and I've got this horrible cough. I cough and there goes my light on and off. But other than that, I like it.
No, actually, I don't want to correct you. You didn't buy the clapper. You bought the coffer. The coffer is another item.
Now, Paul, why don't you get it from behind the couch?
Well, I'm old and I have to climb over. It's a table behind the couch.
Okay.
And it was a problem turning the light on and off.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I bought I think they bought it, my girls bought it for me for my birthday.
That's very nice.
And bought me the clapper, and I like it. Other than when I am coughing, it's good.
That's great. Well, Paul, we hope you stop coughing sometime soon. Thank you for the call. Zoe just says in the control room, which is where our coworkers are, they're talking about shrinky dinks, literally just like plastic that you put in the oven and it gets smaller. What is the point?
I don't know. Is that food?
Can you tell us a little bit more about the shrink?
It was like you would draw something and then on the plastic and then just
Oh, so Zoe says you draw or do something to the plastic, you put it in the oven, and it gets smaller, and apparently that is inspirational to somebody.
Here's one we forgot. Who can forget Susan Summers' Thigh Master from the 80s?
Yeah.
She used to sit there with the Thigh Master
Going
between
back
her
and forth,
thighs, and
yeah.
it was supposed to like tone your thighs. This texter, Marianne from Beverly, says, I think I used it twice. I own 2 versions of the George Foreman grill. Love them, that haven't used them in years. And she says she's going to resurrect them now in honor of George himself. But she got the Susan Summers Thigh Master, used it twice, and that was the end of that. There seems to be a lot of this, using it once or twice, and then
because the
selling it with the yard.
What is that called? Is off the rose. What is off the rose?
Bloom is off the rose.
The bloom is. I mean, you open it, you use it once, and then you got to wash it or whatever. George Foreman is worth talking about for a minute because he had a remarkable life. I mean, I mentioned businessman, obviously, and minister later in life. If you haven't seen When We Were Kings, which I continue to believe is won the Academy Award.
It's really good.
It's the finest documentary ever made. It's about when George Foreman and Ali fought in Africa, and the conventional wisdom was nobody could beat George Foreman. He's undefeated. As great as Ali was, he was going to get murdered. That's where the rope-a-dope came about, where Ali, rather than dancing, lay against the ropes. People said he's getting killed. I remember watching him, thinking he was getting killed. In fact, he was trying to tire Foreman out. He finally did in the 8th round. He knocked out Foreman. Foreman was portrayed, Ali was portrayed correctly as a man of the people. Foreman was portrayed as this ferocious, fearsome guy in so many ways nobody liked. As you say, he got off the plane in the movie with German Shepherds, which particularly
hated.
in that country
Yes.
were hated because the military leaders, and I use the term usually, use dogs to control the population. And later in life, after he basically disappeared because he was so humiliated by the loss, so depressed, he came back as this incredibly affable, warm, approachable kind of guy who was not only a great salesperson, but everybody who dealt with him later in life said he was really a terrific
Well, it's a really good
person,
movie. I
too.
mean, you see a young Muhammad Ali jogging through the countryside, and
so
the kids
beautiful.
all cheering at him. It's a really good movie. I don't even like boxing, but it's a really good movie.
No, it's not really about boxing.
If you don't look at the boxing scenes, you'll be fine.
By the way, here's anonymous. I'm sorry. A texter says, "I love my Dustbuster. If I could only find the charger."
That's mine.
Thank you very much.
Jim gave me a charger for Christmas. That was
I
a very
did.
lovely
You had already
present.
bought a new
I'd already bought a new
Dustbuster.
one with a new, and it was expensive. I was surprised it had gone up in price. It was
Not the charger.
$49 or
That's
something.
horrible.
Okay, now a lot of people have talked about the slap chop, and since Vince
No,
offered,
you've talked about the slap chop.
well, the texters.
Oh,
I mean.
I'm sorry. Go
So
ahead.
since Vince offers got the ShamWow commercials,
Yeah.
he also did the slap chop commercials.
did?
So we have a clip from the slap chop infomercial
goodness.
featuring again the man who made ShamWows famous, Vince
Who's that?
Offer.
Vince Offer.
And this slap chop thing comes from first aired in 2008.
You're going to be in a great mood all day because you're going to be slapping your troubles away with the slap chop. Now, look, here's a potato. One slap, you got big chunks for stews. Two slaps, home fries in a second. And look at this. But you add a mushroom, the more you do it, the finer it gets. You don't have to switch any grains. You love salad. You hate making it. Take the stringy celery, take the carrots, salad. I love pizza, too, but once in a while, get the veggies in. At least throw it on top of the pizza. This tuna looks boring. Stop having a boring tuna. Stop having a boring life.
That
What
was
a
not
great pitch
2008.
man.
Isn't that much old? 2008?
They first aired in 2008.
much older.
Yeah, well, he was a ShamWow man. Yeah, want to hear another ShamWow ad?
Oh, I guess we're going to.
Okay, here's the sound.
Sorry you all called, but Marjorie's having a good time, so
Well,
we don't have time
we
to
just
talk
had
to
some
you.
great sound.
Okay,
Here's
go ahead.
sound for the Discovery Channel's reality show about
Sure.
infomercial guys called the Pitchmen.
Go ahead.
This is Billy Mays' production crew
Billy Mays, yeah.
teasing him about the success of course, these ShamWow.
Maybe you should use a ShamWow.
Now you really... You know what? No, don't talk about that. No.
You get a shampoo. I don't care if you're a mayor or state legislator. I'll give you a noogie, then a shampoo.
What is that? What was that? What was
Just
that?
talking about ShamWows and shampoos. I thought it was a riot.
Okay.
Okay, let's go to Harvey. Oh, Harvey in Ipswich is back. Hi, Harvey.
Oh, he is. Hello, Harvey.
Hi there. Hi there.
Hi.
Hey, my favorite one. My favorite one is I've got this set of giant Ziploc bags that you use for traveling. You roll all your clothing up and put it in the bag, and attach the vacuum cleaner to it, and it sucks all the air out and makes everything small enough so it fits in your suitcase. It's fantastic. You can fit everything in there.
So it's like you shrink wrap your clothing.
The problem is when you come home, there's no vacuum in the hotel.
Yeah,
And you can't fit your clothes back in the suitcase when you come home.
That's a very serious problem. Thank you. That was an excellent call, and we're glad you stuck around, Harvey.
Now-
Thank you very much.
So the texters are reminding me that Mr. ShamWow got in a little trouble.
What did he do?
Well, I think he got into an altercation.
Oh, one of them got in a lot of trouble.
With a prostitute.
Yeah, he did.
Back in a few years back.
Yeah.
So apparently he's not doing the ShamWow commercials
really sad.
at this particular juncture.
That's too
But when
bad.
he was doing them, they were really great.
I don't think anybody's doing the ShamWow. I don't even know because I don't stay up that late. As Seen on TV still on TV? I mean, do you still buy crap at midnight from like?
Well, I think it's different now because of streaming and all that. And I haven't seen any. Do you ever see any of these commercials? I never do.
No, I just see like 95-year-old people talking about medicine on CNN 60 Minutes.
Yeah, 60. Well, the average age is
Yeah.
pretty old on. That's why we watch it, Jim.
You know what they all own? ShamWows. Is the plural of ShamWow ShamWows?
I think a lot of people use it.
ShamWow.
Thank you, Zoe. You can clean the inside of your car with a ShamWow. Isn't that what people do?
I don't know. Now, okay, let's guess as we always do. Has Jared ever bought anything from As Seen on TV? I would say
no.
Yes. What's the right answer, Jared
Well,
Bowen?
it's somewhere in the middle. One of my favorite things was a gift. I didn't buy it, but
Okay.
it's the UV glove. Nobody has mentioned.
What's the UV glove?
The UV glove. It's the mitten that you put on the glove to. It's like to pull things out of the oven for the 3 times a year.
Called an
that I do
oven
that.
mitt.
No, it's called an UV glove.
UV glove.
Well, wait a minute. What's the difference between an oven mitt and the UV glove, please? Fingers in it?
It's probably made of all these cancer-causing agents that protect your hands for 4 seconds, but take years off your life.
Okay. See, he's never bought anything, Jim. I knew
Somebody
it.
also gave me the egg extractor, and that was a horrible thing.
What is the egg extractor?
Supposed to peel the eggs in this little machine really easily. I pressed it down. Eggs exploded everywhere all over my kitchen. It immediately went into the trash.
That's great.
We've got pictures of the UV glove. It's right here, Jared.
very nice.
It's
got
fabulous.
it's navy and white with little stripes.
Oh, mine is yellow from the early days.
That's
And by the
so
way,
good.
I know from time I spent with my dad, those ads are very much still on the TV.
They are really?
Yeah.
Oh, that's
Why
great.
don't I ever see them? What stations are they on?
You have to be watching. I don't want to.
Okay, don't
QVC, the QVC station?
I don't want to profile my father.
Okay.
Let's not profile him.
All right,
Let's
okay.
just profile you. What are you
What's on
doing
your
at
show?
2 o'clock?
We're going to be speaking with Igor Goliak, the founder and producing artistic director of Arlequin Players Theater, about their 15th anniversary, where they're going. Of course, they became huge during the pandemic, became an international theater company, so it'll be fun to speak with them. Robert Waldinger, the doctor who has presided over the Harvard Happiness Study. Yeah, we'll learn some tips on what it takes to be happy these days. And Pedro Alonso is just back from London, the public art curator. He will share what he's seen there.
You know what it takes to be happy? A Floby.
Yeah.
That's what it takes to be happy. I can speak from personal experience.
No, I think it's the ShamWow, Jim.
Good
I think
luck.
we'd established that.
Hey, Jared, there. Good luck with the
there's
show.
more.
We'll be watching. We'll be watching
All right.
at 2 o'clock. Thank
That's
you
right.
very
That's
much.
Ron Pompeo saying, "Wait, there's more." Isn't that great the way he does
I love
that?
that. I love him.
Yeah, is he still around, do you think, Ron Pompeo? Okay, thank you for listening to another
Maybe he
edition of
is.
Boston Public Radio. And thanks to everybody who came down to the show at the Boston Public Library. Really appreciate it.
You'll all be getting a ShamWow in the mail, by the way, so check your mailboxes soon, please.
Okay, you can keep up with us 24/7 wherever our podcast, or check out our TikTok page at Boston Public Radio.
ShamWow. What a
ShamWow.
great name. Can you imagine
Isn't it great?
sitting in a room? What should we call this thing? How about the ShamWow?
Yeah, poor Vince, getting in a little trouble. Anyway, keep up with us. I already said that.
You did.
Tomorrow we're going to be here. We're going to be joined by former USAID administrator under George W. Bush, Andrew Nasiosis
I
from
can't wait.
Massachusetts.
I know
right?
that. Former head of the Republican Party.
That's right. We're going to talk with him about what's happened to USAID, plus the Globe Shirley Young, former Massachusetts Secretary of Public Safety Andrew Cabral, and Vulture podcast critic Nick
great,
Quah is
Nick
going to tell us
Quah.
all the best
Great.
podcasts. One of them is ours here from GBH.
I know.
about
Scratch and
that's right,
Scratch
the
and
lottery.
Win. Scratch and win. Thank you.
Our
Sorry.
crew, Zoe Matthews, Aidan Conley, Nicole Garcia, Hannah Loss. Additional support from Tamsin Vidal, our engineer,